Pirate God Level Cartoonist, Chapter 41-60. Chapter 41 Turtle Big Mom 4th Update. Can you make a cake that pleases you? Roha sneered. To tell you the truth, the food drawn on the spirit of eating halberds is just the practice of our group chefs. There are more delicious foods than those, the chefs' peak work, including cuisines from all over the world. Essence, a total of 108 dishes, cold dishes, stir-fry dishes, hot dishes, and beets are all included. Just eating it, you will have to eat a full 3-day Manchu Han feast. Have you heard of it? Mere cakes. Don't insult people. 1. 108 dishes for 3 days. There was clearly a sound of swallowing on the other end of the phone. After a long time, Bigmom muttered, but I only want to eat sweets. Hearing this, Pokemus on the side wanted to smash his head. Is this still the Bigbomm he knows? How can you speak in such a tone? Could it be that the strength of the Dimensional Brigade has reached the level that makes Mother jealous? I must be dreaming. Pokemus took out a bottle of water and poured it on his head, trying to calm himself down. On the other side, Roha is still pretending. Ah no, still talking to Bigmom. Cake. It's very simple, but I don't know what kind of cake you want to eat, whether it's roux foam cake or heavy oil cake, or sponge cake and chiffon cake. Of course, we can also make mousse cake, but I don't know what you want to eat. That kind. Bigmom's roar could be vaguely heard. Chop up that Kyun chef for me. I never knew there were so many kinds of cakes. What do they eat? After half a ring, amid the noise, Bigmom picked up the phone again. I just want to eat delicious cake. Just want to eat delicious food. Roha snorted disdainfully. Well, we can make it for you, but I hope you can pay a price that satisfies us after you eat it, otherwise, you will never be able to do it again. Don't try to eat our cake. Of course, as long as you can satisfy me, whether it's money, devil fruit, or even my daughter. Pat. Roha hung up the phone. On the cake island, Bigmom looked at the phone bug with a bewildered expression. How dare someone hang up her phone? The cake island vibrated violently, and Bigmom's roar could be vaguely heard. On the other side, Roha turned to look at Pokemus with a dull face. Find a place to wait. Come and pick up the cake tomorrow morning. After saying that, he went back home. Back in the house, he briefly explained the situation to Monet, and Roha came to the kitchen. Looking at the various kitchen utensils in the kitchen, Roha laughed. It came just in time. Roha was worried that he couldn't open up New World sales. Bigmom came to the door. He is really a good person. But, in addition to the sales of the New World, do you want another daughter? I think Charlotte Bryn is good. No, Bryn is about the size of sugar now. Isn't it too evil to raise it? Hey. With a smile on his face, Roha started to work. Integrating the superb cooking skills of Dojima Jin, Yukihiro Soma, Yukihiro Ichiro, and Shinomiya Kojira, the cakes produced will surely make Bigmom eat all the plates. Early the next morning, Pokemus, who had been waiting at the door, was taken to a huge kitchen by Roha. As soon as he entered the kitchen, Pokemus froze in place. In front of him is a huge multi-layer cake that is 5 meters high and 3 meters in diameter. With a slight sniff from his nose, the rich sound filled Pokemus's body, giving him the urge to plunge into the cake and eat it. How is it? It's great, isn't it? Roha introduced. It is 5 meters high, 3 meters in diameter, and has a total of 7 layers. The specifications of each layer are strictly measured, and they have different textures and tastes, which are enough to satisfy the appetite of any cake lover. I call it Emperor Yuhuo. Quote. Emperor Yuhuo. Pokemus looked at the cake in disbelief, and already had a result in his heart. This cake will absolutely drive Mom crazy. But soon, Pokemus was in deep trouble. That is, how can he get back such a big cake? If this is broken by him, I am afraid that Bigmom will kill him directly. Oh right, Roja pointed to the cake suddenly and said, although this cake has undergone special preservation techniques, its most delicious time is only 7, that is to say, you have to send it to BIGMOM within 7 days. Quote. Click. Pokermus turned his head stiffly as if struck by lightning, staring at Roja. 7 days. Are you sure you're not kidding me? Pokemus was hysterical. What, where is he? In the capital of 7 waters. Where is BIGMOM? In New World Cake Island. Delivered within 7 days. It just killed him. At this moment, Roja glanced at the clock on the wall and said leisurely, you have already wasted 10 minutes, which means that you have 6 days, 23 hours and 50 minutes left, so be as soon as possible. You're cruel. The Pokemon Fry exploded, and as soon as he lifted the cake, he ran to the port. When Pokemus hurried out to sea, he took out the phone bug from his arms and dialed BIGMOM. Who is it? Mom, I'm Pokemus, I've got the cake, but I have a little problem here. Chapter 42 Card Collection. SSR. Hanging up the phone, BIGMOM called for the Cracker. You take the fastest boat out to sea to pick up Pokemus, remember to protect the cake on his boat. Yes. Cracker said no nonsense, and immediately walked out of the room, ready to go to sea. Emperor Yuhuo, I'm really looking forward to it. In the room, the babble of BIGMOM and the sound of drooling reverberated. On the other side, after watching Pokemus leave with a smirk, Roja returned to the room and drew a cartoon. BIGMOM can't resist the charm of Super Cake, just wait for her to ask herself. Not long after, Monet knocked on the door and walked in with a stack of drawings. Brother, the sketches you asked me to send for rubbing have already been done, but I don't understand. It's okay to draw the 4 emperors and generals. Why did you draw some lesser-known pirates and navies? In the sketches brought, in addition to the 4 emperors, Garp, Sengoku, Sora and others, there are now unknown Smog, Blackbeard and others, and even Bucky, who is just a little pirate, is among them. Hey, this is a plan of mine, a plan to make a lot of money. I'll tell you about it in a while, and you'll know. Roja picked up the drawing and said mysteriously. When he saw Carp's painting, the big 3 letters in the upper right corner, SSR, showed a wicked smile. As early as opening the taskbar system and receiving side quests, Roja prepared a plan to make money. After thinking about it, Roja finally came up with a way, that is, a card collection activity. Roja, who had been devastated by various mobile games before crossing, knew very well how expensive it was to collect cards. At the beginning, for an SSR, he spent more than 1,000 RMB, and he still hasn't drawn it. This incident made Roja depressed for a long time. Now, he is going to share this pain with everyone in the pirate world, and let them know how painful it is for African Emirates. Yes, Roja intends to make these pirate characters' paintings into some exquisite cards, which will be included in each fantasy magazine and sold as a bonus. Of course, in order to make the card attractive enough, Roja also prepared a lot of Yuhuo incentives, ensuring that from the 4 emperors to the common people, all of them are crazy about it. After reviewing the draft carefully and revising some details, Roja handed the draft to Monet again. Monet, you take these drawings to a trusted printing house and have them shrink them down into cards the size of playing cards to fit into each newspaper. In terms of quantity, only 1 SSR is released in each issue of the newspaper, and then there are 100 N cards and 1 R card, 1,000 R cards and 1 SR are printed in proportion, and each magazine is sandwiched with 1. And then, all cards above SR are printed with special numbers and recorded. This is very important, don't forget. In the end, Roja also specially warned, send someone to keep an eye on the printing factory responsible for printing cards, and they must not be allowed to print or deduct cards privately. Well, I see, but does this thing really make money? Monet was holding the drawing, confused, and could not see how he could make a lot of money. Of course not. Roja smiled and said, but if I add some rewards, it will be different. Release the announcement, no matter who it is, as long as you can collect a set of 108 different cards, the Dimension Brigade will reward the owner with 500 million berries, or help the owner to complete a general level wish. Collect 3 sets, Dimension the Brigade rewards the owner with 3 billion berries. Or the wish of a dimensional brigade. As soon as these words came out, Monet's eyes widened. Of course, this reward has no Yoo-hoo power for her, but it is different for others. 500 million berry, the promise of the Dimensional Brigade, is simply a reward that many people dare not even imagine. But now, as long as you collect a set of cards, you can realize your dream. Monet could have predicted that the whole world would go crazy because of these little cards. Those who want to collect all the cards will surely be buying fantasy magazines in bulk. A magazine only sells 80 berry, which is a small amount of money for everyone, but it gives everyone a chance to realize their dreams. You don't need to fight, you don't need to work hard, and you don't need to fight people with a mortal determination. Just buy a magazine of 80 berry each, spend some money, and you can make your wish come true. It's the devil's Yoo-hoo. Thinking of this, Monet was a little moved, and he couldn't help looking at Roha's profile in admiration. Brother Roha is simply a genius. Monet looked at Roha excitedly, and after smacking him fiercely, he ran out of the room. She is going to print cards, and she has to tell all the printing houses that this time, the number of prints of Dream magazine will be 5 times, no, 10 times will be enough. Chapter 43 Doflamingo was robbed again. The second. 4 days later, the trading cards are finally going to be distributed. There is no way. The printing house has no experience in printing such small cards. It took a day and a night to change the machine. After instructing his subordinates to hurry up to print and try to put the cards into use as soon as possible, Roha suddenly raised his head, his eyes were piercing, and the mountain-like aura shot into the sky. 2 people hurriedly fell from the sky. Che, I wanted to scare you, but I didn't expect you to react so quickly like the young master. Baby 5, who was frightened by Roha, muttered unhappily. HMPH, it's so boring. An unhappy baby 5, folded his arms and turned his head, snorted. Buffalo on the side was not as casual as her, and nodded to Roha a little nervously. Mr. Roha, young master, let us send you something. Said and handed a burden to Roha. Something. It won't be. Thinking of the account of Doflamingo, Roha suddenly looked happy, and quickly opened the package. Sure enough, inside the package were the ownership transfer certificates of 13 newspapers in the East China Sea. In other words, as long as some contracts are signed, Dream magazine can use the Xinbao resources of these 13 newspapers. As we all know, the delivery of news and newspapers in this world relies on Xinbao, but Xinbao is always a race, with a certain number of population, and the number of newspapers that can be sold is limited. So long ago, the world government issued an order after negotiating with the messenger gull race. Depending on the sales volume of each newspaper, a certain amount of Xinbao will be allocated. The higher the sales volume, the greater the number of Xinbao. These Xinbao were responsible for selling newspapers for the newspaper, and the only way to increase the number of Xinbao is to increase the sales volume except for the merger of the magazine. Originally, based on the sales of Dream magazine, an extremely large number of Xinbao would be allocated, but where there are people, there is corruption and bribery. Those newspaper offices, through various shady means, made the Xinbao, who should be assigned to the Dream magazine, unable to transfer their posts, leaving the former magazine, which simply and effectively curbed the expansion of the Dream magazine. Although Dream magazine has also made a corresponding decision, the rise of Dream magazine is too fast and its foundation is unstable. Whether it is the background or the friendship with the Xinbao race, it is far from being comparable to those of the old magazines. If you really want to open up sales, you have to wait at least 2 or 3 years. But newspaper mergers are different. If the newspapers still dare to delay after the newspaper offices merged, then they are unemployed. The unemployed Xinbao are among the Xinbaogu clan who work in the whole clan, and they are the existence that all the Xinbaogu are despised, and even survival is a problem. As expected of Brother Doflamingo, it's a good move. Roja put away the magazine with joy. In a good mood, he looked at the two of them. Baby 5. I see that you are tired too. How are you? Would you like to try the craftsmanship of the chef? Chef Eater, Buffalo exclaimed in surprise. But, the young master asked us to hurry back. Baby 5 hesitated. Seeing this, Roja took Baby 5's little hand. Please, just take it as I thank you. All right then, let's go. Baby 5 replied immediately blushing. Sure enough, like in the original book, such an obedient loli, if she doesn't receive it. Ahem, if she doesn't receive it from her side, it's hard to accept. While eating, Roja looked at the satisfied Baby 5 with a smile, and the more he looked, the more he liked it. Suddenly, he saw several bruises on Baby 5's arm. Turning to look at Buffalo, sure enough, there are also several scars on Buffalo's body. Baby 5, what happened to Doflamingo recently? Roja pretended to be casual. Well, recently, the young masters. Baby 5 suddenly covered Zooey. I almost said that I missed it, the young master won't let me say it. Sure enough, something happened. Roja stopped Buffalo with his eyes and said in a gentle tone, please, tell me. Okay, Baby said without hesitation. The young master held an auction a few days ago, and the final product was a devil fruit called golden fruit. I wanted to be a trap, but I didn't expect to be caught by someone. Make trouble, and take advantage of the chaos to steal the golden fruit. Quote. Golden fruit. Golden Emperor, Gilder Tezzolo. Is this guy moving too? I just don't know because after I changed Doflamingo's itinerary, this matter is different from the original time. Lucky fruit, ability person beside Tezzolo is very useful, I don't know if I can get it. Roja frowned and thought, and unconsciously, time passed by in a hurry. After eating, Baby 5 played with the sugar that came home for a while, and then left with a face full of reluctance. Roja did not force Baby 5 to stay. The current Baby 5 has too high a sense of belonging to the Don Quixote family, and being too anxious will be counterproductive. When returning to the room, he happened to meet Monet, who came back from the newspaper office. Roja handed over the documents of the newspapers in the East China Sea to Monet, and ordered her to separate some of the newspapers this time and sell them to the East China Sea. Chapter 44 European Emperor Bucky. The Third. In the early morning of the next day, countless letter gulls flew to the New World, Paradise, East China Sea, and West China Sea with fantasy magazines with cards. Boss, this letter gull actually has a dream magazine on it. Every morning, I climbed up to the observation deck, used a gun to tune the letter gull's Jesus cloth, and saw the dream magazine on the letter gull at a glance. Oh, that brat, he's actually sold to the East China Sea. Is Ting great? Shanks smiled and bought a magazine. As soon as the magazine got his hands, Shanks noticed the cards glued to the cover of the magazine. Looking at the pattern on the card, Shankston laughed. Hey, isn't that the guy Bucky? Still giggling, but what does this N mean? The curious Shanks subconsciously found the answer in the magazine. Not to mention, he really found it, and it was printed on the cover of the magazine. This time the magazine cover is different from the past, without various comic characters, but a gorgeous round table. There were a lot of cards scattered on the table. Just taking a glance, Shanks saw acquaintances such as Whitebeard, Kaido, and Carp, as well as some unknown people. Without exception, in each card the upper right corner is marked with letters. At the bottom of the cover, it is written in bold text. In order to give back to all readers for their continuous support, Dream Magazine will start today to hold a card collection event. Readers who collect all the cards required by the event can go to any branch of Dream Magazine with their cards to receive generous rewards. Prize. Close black lens bracket. Below the font, are the details and rules of the event. After reading it, Shanks also understood the meaning of the letters on the card. Cards are divided into 4 levels: SSR, SR, R, and NSSR is the rarest and N is the most common. There are 108 different cards. If it was said that this card was a toy, then when Shanks saw the reward for collecting all the cards, his face could not help but become solemn. 500 million. The promise of the Dimension Brigade. Shanks saw the meaning behind the card at a glance. He suddenly turned his head to look in the direction of the Seven Waters, and laughed. Roha, you really played a big game this time. East China Sea, Bucky Pirates. Boss, it's not good. This time, there is a dream magazine on the letter Gull. A pirate held a dream magazine, hurriedly pushed open the door of the captain's room, and shouted. What? Bucky got up from his seat and grabbed the magazine. After confirming that it was the real dream magazine, he slammed the newspaper to the ground. How can the rubbish of the East Poster Club let Dream magazine be sold here? They don't want to do business. Bucky gets angry as he steps on Dream magazine. Ever since Bucky saw the prices of fantasy magazines on the black market, he felt like he had found an opportunity to make a fortune by reselling fantasy magazines. From the Seven Waters at a price of 50 berry per serving, and sold it to the East China Sea, it can sell for more than 300 berry, and if it is further away, it can even sell for 500 berry. Just from the first reselling, Bucky made a full 4 million berg. Since then, the Bucky pirates have never robbed merchant ships or hunted for treasure, and have completely embarked on the road of reselling. For this reason, he also expanded the fleet and purchased 2 new ships to transport goods. Now, someone actually told him that Dream magazine had already been sold to the East China Sea, and he couldn't resell it. How this calms Bucky down. Trash, 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 trash. Bucky stomped on the magazine under his feet fiercely, and suddenly a card fell out. Huh, what is this? Picking up the card, it was an SSR, red-haired Shanks. Isn't this Shanks' guy? He glanced at Shanks' portrait in disgust, and Bucky threw this SSR out of the window. Captain, what is that? The pirate asked Bucky, looking at the card that fell into the water. It's just a portrait of a nasty ghost, nothing fancy. After throwing away the cards, Bucky only felt as if he had lost some precious food. His heart suddenly became empty, and he was not in the mood to step on magazines. Bucky, who was in a bad mood, threw the magazine out the window and walked outside. You go and notify the fleet to leave. Where to go? Go to the Great Route first, and then go to other sea areas. I don't believe it. Fantasy magazines can be sold all over the world. Bucky laughed wickedly, trying to stop him from making money is impossible. He is going to other sea areas to help those waste magazines and resist the invasion of Dream magazine, and then he is selling them all over the world. Ha 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 ha, Uncle Ben is really a genius, ha 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 ha. Bucky laughed. The pirates on the side looked at Bucky with a bewildered expression, wondering what the captain was going crazy about. Shaking it, the pirates went back to work. The captain went crazy or something, they were used to it. The Bucky fleet slowly sailed into the docked waters, and behind them, the SSR card gradually sank in the sea. Years later, when Bucky looked back, he wept bitterly. I used to be a European, but unfortunately, I threw away the rare SSR card because of impulse. If you give me another chance, even if I call Shanks Dad, I will take that card. Get up. Chapter 45 African Emirates Green Pheasant 4th Update. In the Navy headquarters, Sengoku and others who have been paying close attention to Dream magazine, naturally knew about this event at the first time. The next day, in the marshal's office. Kaza Kaza, this activity is interesting, to fulfill a wish. Kaza Kaza, does that allow them to join the Navy? Kaza Kaza, Carp held a large bag of snacks, while eating. It doesn't make sense. How could it be possible to pull the Dimension Brigade over with just one wish? Warring States leaned on his chin and mused, with a card in front of him. Marshal, what do you think? Warring States asked Shang Kong. Crack, kick. On the marshal's desk, he pondered on an empty table. Crack, kick. Marshal, Marshal. Warring States waited for a long time without waiting for Sora's reply, and called tentatively. Sora. Contemplation. Crack. Kick. Marshall. Warring States suddenly shouted, startling Kong Kong. What's the matter? What's wrong? Sora hurriedly stood up and looked left and right. When he saw Sengoku's unhappy face, he acted angrily and scratched his head a little embarrassedly. Oh, I was distracted. Last night, I was pestered by the children to ask for cards. I bought them 100 newspapers in one go. I didn't expect that I didn't even have a SR, and I ended up being troubled by the children all night. I'm too sleepy, I'm sorry. Kong San smiled. Marshall, you are really. Warring States held his forehead. Kaza. Garp was still eating snacks. Ru's eyes could see it, and the blue veins emerged from Zongguo's forehead. Crack. Kick. Don't eat it. Sengoku stood up frantically, grabbed Garp's snacks, and poured them all into his own pocket. I told you to eat again. Don't, leave some for me. Garp looked at the Warring States pitifully, and finally got the empty bag. After eating Garp's snacks, Sengoku felt a little better. I haven't come up with a solution for this for a while, but it is still necessary to collect cards. A notice will be issued soon, saying that the headquarters will collect cards. Of course, it will not be taken for nothing. What is the price on the black market? Give as much as you want, okay. Ignoring Garp's complaining gaze, Sengoku looked at Sora. Okay, just do as you say. Sora nodded in agreement. Then that's it for this meeting. Sengoku kicked Garp. You can go back to eat snacks, let's go. Che, you bad-tempered guy. Garp pouted, took the tea from the empty table, and walked out leisurely. Just as Sengoku was about to leave, Sora suddenly stopped him behind him. Senguo, how are you thinking about your succession? Sengoku's back froze, and after a while he replied, let me think about it again. After speaking, Sengoku left the office with heavy steps. Inside the office, Sora took a deep breath, leaned back on the chair, and looked at the navy cloak on the wall, with a look of nostalgia. I am finally going to retire. In the corridor, Garp usually drinks tea while thinking about it. That guy in the Warring States period, really, he actually ate all my snacks, that's what I brought from the East China Sea. At this moment, Garp suddenly saw Aokiji approaching. Yo, Aokiji, did you buy fantasy magazines today? I bought it, Mr. Garp, have you bought it too? Aokiji was very polite to Garp, who he admired. Well, of course I bought it, but I'm not very lucky. Garp said, and took out a card from his arms, with a picture of the Phoenix Marco on it, and the level was SR. When he saw the big SR word on it, Aokiji's eyes suddenly widened. It's actually SR. Mr. Garp's luck is very good. Ha, of course. Garp laughed loudly. It's a pity that I didn't get SSR, but I think I can get it next time. By the way, what kind of card are you, Aokiji? Stunned when asked, and replied somewhat unnaturally. Our card, Pokemus, should be a fighter of BIGBOOM. Well, then your luck is really bad. Next time we come back to see who has better luck. Garp patted Aokiji's shoulder and left without thinking much. Looking at Garp who was far away, Aokiji twitched his corners, took out from the inner lining of his clothes, and then actually took out a stack of cards. Except for the top are K-pop moves, the rest are actually N cards. No matter how bad luck is, it won't be so miserable. Qingzi was a little helpless. Trading cards are still on sale. Seeing the rapid growth in sales, the Roha family are very happy. Shatang also felt the happy proposals of his brothers and sisters. Each of the four of them went to buy a newspaper, and then came to compare their luck. Of course, the Roach would not refuse the sugar request, so they bought a newspaper each. The result was surprising. Roha, Monet, and Arturia all drew SR, only Sugar was the worst, and only N card was drawn. Seeing Sugar who was about to cry, Roha hurriedly gave Sugar to all three of the cards, and finally promised to make Sugar an exclusive card, which saved Sugar's mood. After finally coaxing the little beauty, the phone in the office suddenly rang. "Hello, Dream Magazine, who are you looking for?" Roja answered the phone. After half a ring, a low male voice came from the other end of the phone. "Help me ask the people from the Dimension Brigade, if you have collected all the rewards from the cards, can you let them kill the Tianlong people?" Chapter 46 Crumbling Acrylic Stand. Kill Tianlong people? You wait. Roja frowned and signaled Monet to turn on the anti-monitoring phone bug. When Monet was ready, he continued to speak. "Of course you can kill Tianlong people, but I need to know who you are to see if you can afford it. My name is Guild Tezzolo, maybe you don't know who I am, but..." Tezzolo on the other end of the phone was full of arrogance. Guild Tezzolo, the golden fruit ability person, has a subordinate named Baccarat who is the luck fruit ability person, right? Roja interrupted him rudely. "How do you know?" This time, Tezzolo on the other end of the phone can no longer calm down. It is not surprising that Jinjingguo is known to him, but Baccarat's ability is his biggest secret now, and it is also known. If there is a reason, it can only be said, because we are a dimensional brigade. Roja hooked his corner and sat back in the chair. Sure enough, at this time, Baccarat was already by Tezzolo's side, otherwise he would never be able to steal the golden fruit from Doflamingo's hands. Thinking of the ability of luck fruit, even Roja had a headache. That ability is too overbearing, and it would be miserable if he was accidentally touched by Baccarat. Fortunately, Baccarat itself is a weak chicken. "Since you know our abilities, then I'll just say it straight. How much does it cost to let you guys shoot and kill the Tianlong people?" Tezzolo's tone became cold when he mentioned the Tianlong people. "Well, so, 1 set of cards, we will help you kill a celestial dragon. 3 sets of cards plus half of your future income, we will help you kill the entire celestial dragon clan. How about it? It's a good deal, right?" Roja said slowly, as if he was not talking about exterminating the whole family, but discussing how to clean up the garbage. Of course, in Roja's eyes, Tianlong people are no different from garbage. At least garbage has some recycling value. Do Tianlong people have it? All clan. Are you sure? Tezzolo's eyes widened suddenly, bloodshot in his eyes. At this time, he didn't have half of the income in his mind, and he didn't have any cards. Some of them only had a large number of Tianlong people who died tragically and bloodied the ground. Of course, the Dimension Brigade never lies. As long as you can pay the price, we will dare to do anything. "Okay, that's it," Tezzolo said excitedly. "Then we are looking forward to you collecting all the cards." Roja hung up the phone with a smile. After hanging up the phone, Tezzolo's eyes were red and his face was full of excitement. So many years. He finally got his chance for revenge. Touching the huge brand behind him, Tezzolo grinned and ordered Baccarat beside him. "Baccarat, starting today, in addition to the basic funds for the implementation of the plan, the rest will be used to buy fantasy magazines. Remember, you must buy the first copy yourself. No matter how many people's luck you absorb, you must be sure to get the SSR of each issue." Understood. Baccarat nodded in agreement. After hanging up the phone, Roja rubbed his eyebrows. He has been working too hard recently. He exercises his ability during the day, draws cartoons at night, and sometimes works overtime with Monet. He is as strong as him and feels a little tired. It's just that rest is rest, but his thoughts can't stop. Speaking of which, it's been 5 or 6 days since Pokémos left, and it should be coming to Cake Island soon. I don't know how Bigmom will react after eating it. Roja is very confident about the cake made by the skills of several top chefs. As long as Bigmom takes a bite of the cake, he will be completely conquered by him. What kind of conquest? Just think blindly. Thinking of Bigmom's appearance, Roja was nauseated for a while. At this time, in the New World, a pursuit battle that lasted for 3 days and 3 nights continued. "Call all the navies in the surrounding waters. Call all the navies in the surrounding waters. Here is the flying squirrel. everyone immediately goes to our department to gather at 100 nautical miles to intercept BIGMOM's ships. Please pay attention to all the navies who received this order. The ship has the most evil pirate cradle of the BIGMOM pirate group, and it is likely to have a large threat weapon. All troops are only allowed to intercept by artillery bombardment. It is forbidden to approach. It is forbidden to approach. The flying squirrel put down the phone bug in his hand, and looked at the pirate ship heading for the speeding pirate ship with a solemn expression, feeling a little irritable. He and Lieutenant General Crane immediately began a pursuit after receiving a message from the surveillance force that Cricket and Pokemus had joined together to escort a huge box that was likely to contain destructive weapons. But the strength of Nahi Keligia is too amazing, and the progress of the pursuit has been delayed again and again. Seeing that they are about to enter the waters of Cake Island, they have no hope of catching up. What's in it? The flying squirrel felt a little heavy. Can't imagine that the Cracker, one of the Samsung Desert Generals, would rather be beaten passively and escort things safely. At this time, on the ship of the Cracker was going crazy. TMD damn Navy, like a mad dog, there's no end to it. Cracker was a little mad. What's so special? He escorted a cake. Cake. Edible cream cake. Do you want to chase it? Boom. He jumped into the sky again, blocking a cannonball with a biscuit shield, and Cricket gasped violently. No way. In order to protect the cake from being damaged by the shock of the ship, he not only had to block the shells that shot directly at the ship, but he also had to block the shells that fell near the ship. After blocking the shells for 3 days and 3 nights, even if it is as strong as a cradle, it can no longer support it. It's not that he didn't think about sinking naval ships, but as long as he has the intention of getting close to the naval warships, 2 or 3 lieutenant generals will jump out and stop him. The lieutenant general has not paid attention to the Cracker, but the old lady named Crane is different. From Crane's body, Cracker felt an indescribable threat. In this case, Cracker also tried to let his men tell the Navy that what he was escorting was just a cake, not a dangerous weapon, and if he chased further, he would be forced to die. But before the pirate could speak, he was beaten into scum by a cannonball. Pokermas. Cake Island's support hasn't come yet. Cracker shouted. I don't know either. Cake Island hasn't spoken back since yesterday's distress signal, and I don't know. Well, halfway through his words, Pokemus' eyes suddenly widened. Looked ahead in disbelief, shivering all over. Pokermas, what's wrong? Keligia turned back suspiciously and followed Pokemus's gaze. Suddenly, Keligia also froze in place, subconsciously exclaiming. Mom! In front of them was the wreckage of a naval battleship, and above that wreckage, a huge black figure was riding on a strange cloud, floating in the air. BIGMOM goes out in person. Chapter 47. If you like it or not, if you don't eat it, get out. The second Mom actually came in person. Keligia stared at the huge figure flying by with horror on his face. At this time, the naval pursuit troops also saw BIGMOM, and suddenly there were exclamations from the deck. The next moment, the bow of the ship was urgently turned around, and it was about to retreat. Several officers stood at the stern of the ship, waiting in full force. Big waves. Fire in the sky. Thunder. BIBOMM in a state of madness is a big move. A mere 100-meter distance, and the ability to drive 3 times in a row. In the sky, fire rained down, and the fiery flames dyed the sky red. The rain of fire, there were thunders, roaring and roaring, and the person in the middle was killed instantly. On the sea, the tumbling sea water rushes endlessly, and in an instant, waves of up to tens of meters are formed, like the palm of a giant, hitting the chasing fleet. In the face of the furious 4 Emperor-level powerhouses, the chasing fleet had no ability to counterattack at all, and could only defend desperately. But fortunately, Big Bomb's heart was not on them, but after sinking 2 ships, they hurriedly flew to the ship of the Cracker. Where's the cake? Where's the cake? Big MOM roared frantically, drooling uncontrollably. Mom, here it is. Cracker hurriedly moved the cake out. Give it to me. Big Mom grabbed the cake and couldn't wait to grab a piece and eat it. A sip, Big Mom's eyes suddenly changed, and the whole person was in a trance, as if swimming in the boundless sea of cakes, sweet to the bottom of my heart. When she came back to her senses, she looked at the cake as if she was looking at a rare treasure. She jumped on it and ate it with a big mouthful. Delicious. Yummy. Woohoo. I've never eaten such a delicious cake. The cake melted in the mouth, the sweet fragrance filled the body, and the unprecedented satisfaction filled the heart. Big Mom's tears flowed down. The cracker on the side is already stunned, the four emperors Big Mom, actually crying. Is he dreaming? Snapped. Cracker waved and slapped Pokemus. Why are you hitting me? Pokemus' face swelled up instantly. Not dreaming. Mom really cried. Pokemus. WQNMLGB, CNM, beat yourself up. That night, Roha received a call from Big Mom. Soon as the phone was connected, Big Mom shouted frantically. Whether it's money, a boat, or my daughter or something, as long as you can let me eat this kind of cake all the time, you can ask for any conditions. Even if it's something I don't have, I can grab it for you. Whatever it is, can you kill Kaido? Roha joked. What Roha did not expect was that the opposite side fell into a long silence. After a few seconds, a loud voice came from the other end of the phone bug. Mom, what are you doing? Mom, you can't promise him. Come on, my mom's eczema is about to break out. This time, even Roha was stunned. Even if the Emperor Yuhuo cake was really delicious, it wouldn't make Big Mom sick. Big Mom's heavy breathing came from the other end of the phone. On another condition, you know this is impossible. Well, good. Roha thought for a while and said, I want you to sell fantasy magazines with all your might in the New World. That's all. Big Mom demanded. How is it possible? I haven't thought of other conditions yet, I'll talk about it later. Roha said in a beating tone. Big Mom was about to get angry. No one had ever dared to talk to her like that. Delicious cake, you won't be able to eat it later. Roha said leisurely. Boom. Was a loud roar on the other end of the phone, and after a while, Big Mom gritted his teeth and said, Okay, I accept your conditions. When will the cake be delivered? I tell you, every month, no, every week there will be the exact same cake as this one. 1 fortnight. Roha started bargaining, joking, 1 piece a week. It takes more than 10 hours to make such a piece of cake. He does not do anything else. 1 week, Big Mom said. It's only half a month. Roha didn't give in. 10 days. Big Mom gritted his teeth. It's only half a month, if you like it or not. There was another roar, and Big Mom roared, Okay. Just half a month. Oh, remember to send someone to pick up the cake, we don't offer free shipping. Roha licked his ears and hung up the phone. Do. Looking at the phone that was hung up, Big Mom's expression darkened, until he saw the remaining cakes on the other side, and his expression improved. Pokermus, Cracker, I'll leave it to you to pick up cakes in the 7 waters in the future. What? Standing in the ruins, the cricket and Pokemus collapsed and shouted, Come again. You almost killed them if you delivered them once, and you have to deliver them every fortnight. It takes 14 days to go back and forth, doesn't that mean that they basically have no time to rest? Huh, Big Mom snorted coldly, you want to disobey my orders. Seeing this, Keligia and Pokemuston trembled, and only then did they realize that they were not the dimensional brigade that could bargain with their mother, but the sons of Big Mom, who could be killed by Big Mom at any time. Son. No. How is it possible? We are happy for mother to eat cake. And the two quickly shook their heads in denial. Seeing that Big Mom nodded and ignored them, the two looked at each other and sighed, feeling depressed in their hearts. At this time, Roja would never have imagined that just a mere transaction would change the lives of Cricket and Pokemus. For a long time, they competed with the Navy to compete against each other, and they made fun of it. In the end, they became addicted to boating, and became a world-famous, fast double devil, in the future, who specially enjoyed walking the Navy. After hanging up the phone, Roja leaned on the chair and thought about it. This new world has BIGMOM, the rest of the world has Doflamingo, and secretly there is the support of the Revolutionary Army. The goal of selling Dream magazine to the world will be completed soon, and the completion of the main task is only a matter of time. As for the side quests, cartoonist equals local tyrant. It's almost finished. After just 2 days of buying the trading cards, the income has reached 80 million bells. Many of them are local tyrants or gamblers who have bought thousands of copies. When the sales are opened, this task will be completed naturally. The second side quest, Tentacle Monster, is a bit troublesome. Roja is very tight now, and he has no time to open both, so he can only take it slowly. At the thought of time, Roja couldn't help scratching his head. It was too much trouble to make a cake every 2 weeks. How about get a helper? Roja's mind flashed, picked up the indoor phone bug beside him, and dialed Monet's number. Monet, help me check, where is a passenger ship called the Orbit now? Chapter 48. Don't go home to feed the pigs, the third watch. 3 days later, the East China Sea. Roja appeared on an island, holding a ticket, and boarded the Orbit. Stepping onto the passenger ship, Roja looked at the facilities of the passenger ship. As a medium-sized passenger ship, the facilities on the Orbit are of course not comparable to those of luxury cruise ships, but fortunately, the infrastructure is complete, including restaurants, lobby, and chess and card rooms. Perhaps because of living in the most peaceful East China Sea, Roja only found a naval gun on the bow of the ship, and it seemed that it had not been maintained for a long time. Seeing this, Roja also understood why in the original book, he didn't resist at all, and was boarded by Jep's chef pirates. As far as this defense is concerned, any motley crew of pirates can hijack this ship. Let it go, let it go. Just as Roja was visiting the restaurant, a boy's voice suddenly came from behind. Turning his head to look, Sanji, who was only 10 years old, was holding a large stack of plates and quickly ran to the back kitchen. Roja subconsciously wanted to stop Sanji, but before he could speak, Sanji slipped into the kitchen. Roja stood there and thought for a while. With Sanji's temper, I'm afraid he won't go with people for no reason, he has to think of something. A few minutes later, a familiar episode of a TV series from the previous life appeared in Roja's mind, and Roja also had a plan in his heart. After a while, Roja sat in the center of the restaurant. Fu waiter who had been waiting came up and took out the menu. Sir, your menu. Roja nodded in thanks, took the menu, and flipped through it while thinking. Since it is to find fault, then you must compete with the chef of the restaurant. Naturally, you must find some dishes that can easily and intuitively see the outcome. Otherwise, if the other party is lying to the end and will never admit that Roja's dishes are delicious, it will be embarrassing. No time to ink with the chef. However, in the process of browsing, Roja was surprised to find that the dishes here are ridiculously expensive, at least 3 times more expensive than ordinary passenger ships. You must know that the food on the passenger ship is already more expensive than usual, and if it is 3 times more expensive, it is a sky-high price. It can be said that the cheapest dish on this menu is enough for ordinary people to eat for a day. After a question, Roja learned that the chefs on the Orbit were all hired by the captain at a high cost from major restaurants, and the chef had once served as a royal chef for a certain kingdom in the East China Sea. Hearing this, Roja suddenly laughed. Originally, he was worried that hitting the face of an ordinary chef would not be effective, but now, the chef is actually a royal chef. This face will definitely be crisp and sweet, and Sanji is convinced, and knelt on the ground and called the chef. Soon, Roja made a decision. Please bring me a secret dragon beard noodles, thank you. Sir, you are very discerning. This secret dragon mustard noodles is the exclusive dish of our chef. Looking at the entire East China Sea, only our family can make it. Roha rolled his eyes and ignored the fu waiter. Nonsense, this dragon mustard noodle has caught up with the price of several big dishes, and a fool can see that there is a problem. 10 minutes later, a bowl of steaming dragon mustard noodles was placed in front of Roha. Sir, your dragon beard face. The fu waiter respectfully placed the bowls and chopsticks for Roha, but he became more and more nervous. Why is this guest's expression so serious? At this moment, Roha gently picked up a dragon whisker with chopsticks, looking indifferent. 14 buttons. Are your chefs feeding the pigs? I spent so much money to eat 14 buttons ramen. Change. Fu clerk on the side suddenly became embarrassed, and he apologized again and again. I'm sorry, it was my negligence, I gave you the wrong one, and I'll exchange it for you. When I got to the back kitchen, I told Roha's words to the chef. The chef's face was full, and he knew that this was someone who knew the goods. The chef has achieved his position, and many things do not have to be done by himself. Just like this bowl of longshu noodles, his apprentices usually do it. This situation has been going on for a long time. It's not because his apprentices are skilled in cooking, but because most of the guests don't know the goods at all. In addition, the chef's identity as royal chef makes the guests dare not talk nonsense. The unique taste, not to mention the number of buttons in the ramen at a glance. As we all know, the reason why the dragon mustard noodles are so thin is because the chef pulls the noodles back many times to form. And this kind of pullback is called button in ramen. The average dragon beard ramen must have at least 12 buttons in order to be called dragon beard noodles, and each additional button is extremely difficult, and the chef himself is showing the extraordinary craftsmanship of 18 buttons in a square. Therefore, it is regarded as a royal chef. I'll come in person. The head chef was aroused by Roha's comment. Yu Wang, who was competitive, walked to the kitchen table in person. The head chef is about to cook. Wow, it's rare to see it. Everyone, come and see and learn from the chef. Hearing that the chef was going to cook in person, the kitchen suddenly boiled over, and even Sanji, who was washing vegetables, hurriedly surrounded him, watching with excitement. 10 minutes later, a brand new bowl of ramen appeared in front of everyone under the amazed eyes of many chefs. Serve it up, said the head chef proudly. Okay. The fu waiter held up the ramen with the same excitement and walked towards Roha's actions. I thought to myself, now it's up to you to find faults. When the ramen was placed in front of Roha again, Roha couldn't help raising his eyebrows. It's actually 18 buttons. This chef is of a very high level. It's just that I'm here to find fault. I can only be sorry, Roha said silently in his heart. Slowly picking up a few ramen noodles and putting them in his mouth, Roha tasted it carefully. After a while, he raised his head again and looked at the fu clerk with an indifferent expression. I don't add water when kneading the dough, do I add eggs? Sir is amazing, the fu waiter praised. You are the first to eat it for so many years. This is also the secret recipe of our chef. Instead of adding water, adding eggs can greatly improve the toughness of the noodles. Grandstanding, garbage, Roha said suddenly coldly. The fu clerk's eyes widened, staring at Roha. What did he hear just now? Rubbish. Ignoring the stunned expression of the fu clerk, Roha continued. Is it a secret recipe to use eggs when kneading noodles? Then, does your chef know that adding eggs will have a fishy smell? Even if you can't completely remove the fishy smell, you dare to put it on the table. This kind of unprofessional chef is a shame for the industry. You go and tell your head chef that he should stop being a chef. It's just for him to go home and feed the pigs. Chapter 49 Shock. This, sir, you, fu, clerk was also a little angry. This guy is not here to find fault. Roha glanced at the fu waiter coldly, and with a slight force, his entire palm suddenly pressed into the table. This time, as if a basin of cold water was poured on the fu waiter, He shivered, and the food waiter put on a flattering smile on his face again. Wait a minute, I'll tell you the manager to talk to you, I'll make you satisfied. After finishing speaking, he ran away from Roja's position in a hurry, and the fear on his face was clearly visible. It's so terrifying. Their table is made of iron and wood. Even if they cut it down with a knife, it will cut a shallow mark. The guy actually pressed it down with his hand. If this is photographed by him, I am afraid it will be photographed as raw mud. After a while, the manager and the head chef came to Roja together. Glancing at the handprints on the table, the manager shook a little and bent lower. The head chef on the side doesn't care about this. Roja's behavior just now has simply devalued his cooking skills. Sir, this bowl of noodles has been returned by you twice, and the last time you called my secret recipe, grandstanding. Do you really understand ramen? Do you know how to make ramen? Roja hummed. Do you need me to teach you how to make ramen? Teach me. The head chef waved his hand back immediately. Okay, then let me see how you taught me. The manager on the side looked at the tit-for-tat confrontation between the two, and only felt that his legs were weak, and he could not wait to slap the chef to make him sober and take a good look at the handprints on the table. I really want to anger such a murderer. I'm afraid they won't be enough to fight. But before he could persuade him, Roja and the two walked to the kitchen one after another. The manager stamped his feet anxiously, and after instructing someone to contact the captain, he hurriedly followed. As soon as he entered the kitchen, Roja received the attention of all the chefs, ignoring everyone, and he saw Sanji standing in the corner, looking curiously at this side. Sanji, you can't run away. Roja smiled mysteriously and didn't say much. He put on his apron and came to the kitchen counter. He picked up the prepared dough and started to knead it. Ordinary, the head chef on the side sneered. At this moment, he suddenly saw that Roja stopped kneading the noodles, picked up the noodles and began to beat them repeatedly. What is this doing, Vent? The chef was a little puzzled. The method of smashing the noodles, by repeatedly kneading and beating the dough, can make the noodles taste better, smoother and more delicious. Roja explained indifferently while smashing the noodles. In his hand, the dough brought a phantom after another, and fell on the wooden board like a hurricane and an iron plantain. He smashed the entire table with a bang, which shows how strong this force is. Good power. Is it really okay to fall like this? Don't talk, just watch. The chefs around were talking, but Sanji noticed that the head chef's face became serious at some point. Under the amazed gazes of the people around, Roja's movements changed again. Ru could see that with his beating, the dough, which had different colors, actually began to blend together, white and translucent. Finally, the kneading is over. Looking at the dough in his hand, Roja was full of a sense of accomplishment. The series of actions just now were not only the effects of the chef's skills, but more of his own achievements. Now that his physique has already reached an inhuman level, his mastery of power is far from what chefs who eat halberd can match. It can be said that just at the stage of kneading the dough, he is enough to make the chefs who eat halberd drop their jaws. Most importantly, his cooking skills are more than that. No nonsense, Roja directly began to stretch the noodles. Hold the dough in your hands and pull it apart to keep the dough in a cylindrical shape. Suddenly, Roja slammed down with both hands, and the noodles in his hands suddenly became longer and smashed on the wooden board with a bang. At the moment when the face bounced, Roja handed the face of his left hand to his right hand like lightning, and at the same time his left hand grabbed the middle end of the face and instantly stretched it. This is what ramen calls a knock. Next, every time he pulled back, Roja would smash the noodles hard on the wooden board. The shock surface method makes the noodles stronger through vibration. The force is very strict when using it, but as long as it is used successfully, the ductility and elasticity of the surface can be continuously increased, thereby preventing the surface from breaking suddenly. Roja did it without forgetting to explain. The head chef at this time was speechless, because during the time Roja was talking, Roja had already buckled his face 15 times, which was faster than his own speed, I don't know how much. At this time, the noodles, which were thick as wrists, had turned into silky silver threads, so thin that they were invisible. But it wasn't over yet, and Roja's hand kicked back 3 times with lightning speed. 18 times. Someone next to him exclaimed that 18 times was already the limit of the chef, and the man in front of him had to continue. Boom. Pull back again. 19 times. At this time, there is no hostility in the eyes of the head chef, and it is natural to be looked down upon by a chef of this strength. However, Roja is not planning to stop. He wants to conquer these people once and let Sanji worship him as a god. Post your testimonials here in advance. In the blink of an eye, this book has 100,000 words, and it's time to hit the shelves. Thank you for your support these days. I hope that readers who like this book will continue to witness the growth of this book, and readers who do not like it are welcome to leave what you think is insufficient. Not much to say, 10 more will be offered on the day of the launch. Readers who want to gain weight hope that they can subscribe to the first chapter and let me see how many readers this book can get. Don't feed me to death. Screaming. In addition, for spoilers, on the first day, 10 will start to draw the plot of One Piece. Chapter 50 Sanji's Apprenticeship, 1/10. Boom, boom, boom. 3 beats sounded in succession. 22. The head chef's heart skipped a beat and he almost fell to the ground. What did he see? 22 buckles. Did he see the god of ramen? You must know that in the entire East China Sea, there is no master who has achieved this level more than 20 times. It is as difficult as going to the sky to take a step forward, and now he has seen a person who has advanced 2 steps. I've served it. The head chef bowed down convincingly and bowed deeply to Roja. Master, you were right. Just when everyone looked at the chef in surprise, in the silent room, there was another explosion. Boom. The head chef shuddered and raised his head in disbelief. I saw Roja's arms spread out, the broken noodles flying in front of him, and in his hands, he firmly grasped a handful of noodles as thin as cow hair. 23 times. Master. The head chef knelt down with a bang and hugged Roja's thigh. Go away. Roja kicked the chef away with one foot, came to the oil pan that had already been prepared, threw the noodles into the pan, picked it up again in an instant, and put it into a bowl. At the same time, the other hand picked up the side dishes and poured them on it, arranging it in the shape of a dragon, and after a while, a bowl of fried dragon mustard noodles was completed. Please use it. Roja put the ramen in the center of the chefs and stood aside casually. At first, none of the chefs was moved, and they all looked at the ramen in the bowl like a pilgrimage. Until someone couldn't help the temptation and quietly picked up the chopsticks, everyone rushed over and finished eating the ramen in an instant. Cool. So cool. I never knew ramen could be so delicious. It's delicious. It's delicious. Even the best barbecue can't match the taste. Just as everyone was savoring the deliciousness of ramen, Roja's voice suddenly came. Who made this bowl of egg fried rice? Everyone looked back and saw Roja holding a bowl of egg fried rice and tasting it quietly. Everyone is not calm now. The egg fried rice that can make such a god-level chef notice must be extraordinary. Who is it that can make such a god take his fancy? Just when everyone was talking, a thin figure came out timidly. Sir, I did it. It was Sanji. Roja did not answer him, but tasted the egg fried rice in his mouth. Well, the rice is fragrant, and it doesn't have the greasy taste of ordinary egg fried rice. The workmanship is very meticulous, so that the eggs are completely wrapped around the rice grains, so that the rice grains are completely golden brown, so that the eggs and rice fragrance are perfectly mixed. But the shortcomings are also obvious. Not to mention the poor quality of the ingredients, the chef's experience is also slightly insufficient, and the production time is too long, which has lost a lot of essence. After slowly saying his evaluation, Roja opened his eyes and looked directly at Sanji. You really made this bowl of egg fried rice? Yes, sir, Sanji said nervously. Then, do you want to be my apprentice? Roja said lightly, his eyes flashing with the eyes of a successful trick. As early as entering the kitchen, Roja observed it for a long time. Through the stains and egg liquid on Sanji's body, as well as the kitchen utensils on the kitchen table next to him, he could see the origin of this egg fried rice at a glance. But to draw out Sanji, so that accepting disciples is not so abrupt. After all, he wanted Sanji willingly to help him make cakes, and Sanji must be willing to worship him as his teacher. Sure enough, Sanji's eyes lit up when he heard his words. Really, 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 Roja smiled and nodded. But the captain sighed. Sanji muttered suddenly. Captain. Roja smiled and suddenly looked back at the door. Can I take Sanji away? The captain, who has been watching this side from the door, hurriedly agreed. After seeing the captain's agreement, Sanji was obviously relieved, and fell to his knees on the ground. Bang 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 3 heads. Master. Hey. Roja replied with a smile, full of sense of accomplishment in his heart, and even he did not expect that he would abduct Sanji, one of the 3 main players, for the first time in the plot of the original work. Come on, go home with the master. Roja couldn't wait to pull up Sanji and walked to the deck. Go home. Where are you going? Sanji was a little confused. Aren't they at sea? How to get there? Until Roja transformed into Accelerator and carried Sanji into the sky, Sanji was still in a state of confusion. He actually went to heaven. His master, actually transformed. What kind of master did he worship? Master, who are you? Sanji stammered and asked, looking at the sea that was passing by quickly under his feet. Roja, Dimensional Brigade Roja, remember. Roja looked at Sanji with a smirk. Click. Sanji's body froze suddenly, raised his head in disbelief, and looked at Roja. His master was actually a member of the 1.0 Dimensional Brigade. That Dimensional Brigade that is comparable to the 4 Emperor Pirates. The Dimensional Brigade that could destroy the Vinsmoke family. The sudden sense of happiness fell from the sky, and Sanji's eyes went blank, and he actually fainted. Hey, wake up, wake up. Roja silently shook Sanji in his hand with a helpless expression. This mental quality is not good either. When he knows that he will make a giant cake in less than half a month, he will not be dizzy. Must be trained well. At this time, Sanji didn't know that Roja had planned dozens of devil trainings for him in his mind during the period when he fainted. Chapter 51 Culinary Genius. Roja did not fly directly back to the 7 Waters with Sanji, but after entering the Great Route, he chartered a passenger ship and rested for a while. However, the next day, before dawn, Roja heard a knock on the door of his room. Who is it? Rubbing his eyes that he didn't get enough rest because he rushed the draft all night last night, Roja was upset, put on his clothes, and opened the door. At this time, who could knock on his door? Besides his cheap apprentice, who else could be? Sure enough, as soon as the door opened, he saw Sanji standing at the door, looking at Roja excitedly. Master, I'm here to learn cooking. Sanji shouted excitedly. Yeah, Roja nodded angrily and asked, Sanji, have you had breakfast yet? Breakfast? Sanji was taken aback. Isn't it 5 o'clock? It's too early for breakfast. Roja's face froze, and he couldn't help grabbing Sanji's shoulder and shaking it desperately. You still know it's only 5 o'clock. You still know it. Look outside, it's not yet dawn, you can see everything. I can't see clearly, what to study? As soon as he saw the dark sky outside, Roja didn't get angry, and smashed the door before it was bright, which was too outrageous. Sanji, 27 inches. Sanji looked sluggish, facing Roja's getting up. He didn't know how to react for a while. Seeing Sanji's stunned face, the excitement on his face has not dissipated. Roja couldn't bear it, and sighed. Forget it, it just happens that I will prepare a breakfast for you, and we will go to class after eating. Saying that, Roja started and walked towards the direction of the kitchen. The master cooks breakfast. A smile instantly appeared on Sanji's face, and he hurriedly followed. When he came to the kitchen, Roja didn't talk nonsense. He picked up rice and eggs and started to make the simplest egg fried rice. Without much effort, 2 bowls of fragrant egg fried rice were placed in front of the two of them. Eat. Roja took the apron and said lightly. Yes, master. Sanji, who couldn't wait for a long time, picked up the bowl and chopsticks and started to eat. Sanji's eyes lit up immediately after taking the first bite. There is such a delicious egg fried rice. As expected of a master. The greedy worms in his stomach were aroused by the aroma of egg fried rice, and Sanji didn't care about etiquette, holding the bowl and slurping the rice in his mouth. Eat slowly, don't choke, there's more, come and have some more soup. Roja pushed the soup beside him, looked at Sanji who was eating with a flushed face, and smirked in his heart. Eat, eat, eat when you're full, and you'll suffer later, tell you not to let me sleep well in the early morning. It didn't take long for Sanji to eat 3 bowls of egg fried rice plus 2 bowls of miso soup. Wow I'm so full, the food cooked by the master is so delicious. Delicious. Roja put away the smirk on his face, straightened his face, and said solemnly, how is it delicious? Huh. Kayamaji blinked, looking at Roja, who suddenly became serious. Something in his heart, stammered, just. It's delicious. Sanji. Roja suddenly slapped the table and said coldly, don't you even have the most basic self-consciousness as a chef? I ask you, did you read it when I was cooking? Did you see my technique and ingredients? Did you taste it while eating? Did you taste the difference between this bowl of egg fried rice and ordinary egg fried rice? Is there any? Sanji was stunned by Roja's repeated questions. His face was flushed, he stuttered for a long time, and finally lowered his head in despair. Master, I don't have one. No, Roja snorted coldly, resisting the desire to laugh, then go eat another bowl. Write me a tasting result tonight. Sanji, you have to remember that a real chef must always be strict with himself, and never forget his identity as a chef at any time. All chefs are the object of your study, and every kind of food is your most precious treasure, only in this way can you surpass me. Do you understand? More than the master. An excited look appeared on Sanji's face, and he shouted, remember. I didn't hear it, louder. You don't even have that confidence. Remember, Sanji yelled. Okay, Roja nodded. This is the end of today's first lesson, and now the second lesson will begin. Saying that, Roja picked up a radish on the chopping board. That's it for today's lesson. Sanji scratched his head, what is there to teach a radish? Before Sanji could post, he saw Roja picked up the kitchen knife beside him, cut a knife across the radish, and then handed the kitchen knife to Sanji. Do you understand? Sanji took the kitchen knife with question marks all over his head, look. What do you understand? Roja covered his forehead helplessly, is this kid really Sanji Kurozu? How can you be so stupid? With a helpless face, Roja pointed to the side of the kitchen knife. Looking at Roja's gaze, Sanji looked at the knife face suspiciously. He was a little confused at first, but immediately, Sanji's pupils suddenly enlarged and stared at the knife face. The trembling Shen shot, and Sanji peeled off a slice of radish as thin as a cicada's wings from the blade. Putting the sliced radish in front of him, Sanji actually saw Roja standing opposite. It is conceivable how perverted Roja's knife's control of power is. Understand. Roja smiled lightly. Knife skill is one of the most important basic skills for a chef. Starting today, you will cut 100 radishes a day for a month. If you can cut the radishes thin and transparent, I will teach you other things. This is a very demanding exercise. Cut 100 radishes with a knife, and maintain the strength of each knife to make the radishes as thin as possible. Even if a real chef does it, it will not be completed within a dozen hours. According to Roja's plan, if Sanji wanted to cut 100 radishes a day, he would have to practice hard for at least half a month. It sounds like a lot of work, but it's all worth it. Although Sanji in the original book has superb cooking skills, 487 is a wild man after all, and he is able to achieve so much thanks to his own talent and hard work. Roha believes that after his own training, Sanji, who has grown up, will be more than twice as strong as the original in terms of cooking skills and strength. After listening to Roha's instructions, Sanji didn't think about whether he could complete the task at all, but was thinking about how long it would take for his sword skills to catch up with Roha. Yes, Sanji's goal is not to cut the light at all, but to surpass Roha. From the very beginning, he will surpass Roha Adam as his lifelong pursuit. No nonsense, Sanji took the knife in Roha's hand and cut the radish seriously. Roha glanced at Sanji's technique and nodded with satisfaction. It can be seen that Sanji listened to his words, and every knife was imitating the knife that Roha had just made. Progress is rapid. After silently closing the kitchen door and instructing the crew not to enter the kitchen, Roha returned to his room. He is still sleepy, and he is going to sleep. Of course, Sanji, who was immersed in training, had no idea of all this. At this moment, the radish, the knife, the radish, the knife in his eyes. And, the slice of radish that Roha cut. 100 a day, it takes a month to complete. Then if I cut 200 a day, will it take half a month? 300 a day will take 10 days. Be sure to surprise the master. With this thought in mind, the sword in Sanji's hand became faster and faster. Chapter 52 Bucky's Remorse 3/10. In this sleep, Roha slept until the evening before waking up, and when he returned to the kitchen, he saw an amazing scene. In the kitchen with a large space, there was a small hill made of radish slices, and on top of the hill, Xiao Sanji kept peeling the radish. Shish! In just a few minutes, the radish in Sanji's hand had already been cut by him. After cutting it, Sanji paused for a few seconds, put on a state of contemplation, and then picked up a radish again and began to cut. What surprised Roha was that every time Sanji changed a few radishes, his swordsmanship would improve once. Although the improvement was small, he couldn't stand it many times. The pile of peeled radishes at Sanji's feet alone is at least 150 or 60, which means that Sanji has at least dozens of opportunities to improve. Roha, who was shocked by the scene in front of him, couldn't help laughing. Doubled. It turned out how ridiculous his thoughts were. With Sanji's hard work and his own training, he wouldn't be surprised even if he improved a lot. A few hours later, Sanji was still peeling radishes, and Roha just stood there watching him quietly. At this time, Sanji's head was about to touch the roof, and the radish mountain under his feet was already 3 meters high, which was extremely spectacular. During this period, Roha saw Sanji's hand cut by a knife more than once, but he just tore off a piece of cloth from his clothes, wrapped it around at will, and started swinging the knife again. This persistence made Roha unable to help but be moved. This is the real effort. After watching Sanji and thinking about himself, Roha really felt ashamed. Compared with Sanji, his so-called ability training was just fun after dinner. It's time to work hard, Roha said to himself silently in his heart. The ability brought by the lottery is not the ability of the strongest stage, just like Accelerator's transformation. The power he has is only the level during the battle with Miss Masaka. Rohas such as Black Wing and White Wing are not at all meeting. The same is true for the stigmata. If he can learn some martial arts or techniques of making energy, then his strength will definitely be greatly increased. Just like the time when he beat Brother Ming, if he can use Bajiquan and internal strength, and he will continue with one set of moves, will he still worry that Brother Ming will not fall? In the final analysis, Roha was still blinded by the ability given by the system and did not want to make progress. Unconsciously, Roha stood on the spot and pondered for a long time. When he raised his head, the sky outside had become pitch black. It's already late at night. Taking a deep breath, Roha calmed down and made his tone as calm as possible. Sanji, today's training is over. Yes, teacher. Sanji quickly turned around and responded, but before he could finish speaking, his small body fell to the side. Teacher, Have I cut enough 100 radishes? Sanji murmured before he fell asleep. You cut 176. Roha looked at Sanji's 10 fingers wrapped in cloth, and said in a low voice. Hearing this, Sanji fell asleep with a happy face. In the following days, in order to prevent Sanji from using his knives too much and causing his fingers to be abolished, Roha specially stipulated the training time. In the morning, he fixed 4 hours of radish peeling, rest at noon, and various special training in the afternoon. Peeling raw eggs with bare hands, training the control of strength, flipping a pot full of sea sand, training strength, tasting all kinds of exquisite or poisonous dishes, exercising taste, various training turns going into battle, busy Sanji is dizzy. While training, Roha suddenly thought of a problem. In the original work, Sanji was influenced by the red feet, Zapu and practiced extraordinary leg skills, but now without Zapu, will Sanji still practice legs? Roha doesn't know this question either. Maybe, it's time to draw a comic that focuses on fist fighting. Looking at Sanji with slightly bulging muscles on his arms, Roha made a silent decision in his heart. After all, Sanji with fists and knives, the style of painting is so strange that he can't accept it at all. At noon 2 days later, after lunch, Roha sat quietly on the deck reading a newspaper. Beside him, Sanji held a radish and kept peeling it. For Sanji's behavior of starting to practice as soon as he is free, Roha has long since ignored it. At this moment, the exclamation of the seafarers suddenly came from the deck. It's a pirate. My God, there are actually 3. It's over, the 3 pirate ships can't escape at all. 3. Roha turned back subconsciously. Not far from the passenger ship, 3 pirate ships were speeding towards this side, and their pirate flag was a clown skeleton with a red nose. Bucky, how did this guy get to the Great Route so early, with 3 more ships? Roha showed an interested look, but he did not expect that the impact he caused had already affected Bucky, and it seemed that the impact was not small. Subconsciously raised the corner of his mouth, Roha looked at the 3 ships approaching with some anticipation, wanting to see why Bucky had changed so much. But unexpectedly, the 3 pirate ships, as if they didn't see the passenger ship, ignored it and rushed past the passenger ship. That posture, like a naval fleet behind them is chasing them. Bucky, what the hell are you doing? Roha was a little stunned. At this time, on the flagship of the Bucky pirates, no one looked back at the passenger ship, all of them were desperately sailing, pursuing faster speed. On the bow, Bucky desperately urged the crew. Hurry up, drive faster. Everyone has their fishing nets ready, and everyone who can go into the water is wearing a diving suit. When you get there, start looking. Just find that SSR and we'll send it. SSR that he had thrown into the sea, Bucky could not wait to give himself a knife. How could I owe my hand so much, and it was thrown into the sea? That's the first SSR. In the latest black market transaction, the second SSR sold for a sky-high price of 100 million berry. Bucky's heart was bleeding at the thought of throwing away 100 million berries, and he had an inexplicable complaint about Dream magazine. Who is not good for you to print, but you actually print that guy Shanks, I don't know if I don't like him, and the uncle lost 100 million berries. Chapter 53 Comics. One Piece. 4/10. A few days later, the East China Sea. The Bucky pirates finally reached their destination. Get into the water. Get me into the water. Don't come back if you don't find SSR. With an order, the crew of the Bucky pirates jumped into the sea one after another, and the dense sound of falling into the water sounded like dumplings. In a blink of an eye, more than 100 people in the whole group, except Bucky, all jumped into the water. God, bless me, I must find SSR. SSR in the 7 waters, and then learning that SR and SSR are made of special materials and have waterproof function, Bucky dreams of finding the SSR that he lost, Shanks. However, things backfired, and after a full day of fishing, I didn't even see the shadow of the card. Instead, the crew members' bodies reached their limit and struggled to return to the ship. Trash. It's all trash. What's the use of raising you guys? I can't even find a single card. Bucky looked at the collapsed crew members on the deck, and his anger didn't come out. Standing on the bow was a burst of curses. The crew members dared not speak out, and could only refute Bucky in their hearts. It's not that you threw the SSR, and now you are blaming me 803s. If you hadn't threw it in the first place, everyone would be rich now. Boss, don't be angry, don't be angry, I suddenly thought of a good way. Chief of Staff Cabbage suddenly came to Bucky's side and said with a charming smile. Didn't we buy a large batch of goods this time? Why don't we take out all the cards in the magazine, and then sell the newspaper for 1 share and the card for 1 share, and if there are good cards in it, we will distribute it. Huh, Bucky's eyes lit up immediately, laughing and patting Cabbage on the shoulder. Genius. Ha ha ha, as expected of the Chief of Staff, what a genius idea. Bucky waved his hand and ordered the pirates, go. Take out all the cards from the magazine to this uncle, whoever gets the SSR will be the deputy captain. With an order, the pirates immediately took action. At this time, Bucky hadn't thought that when trading cards were so hot, would anyone still buy magazines without cards? You know, in order to prevent retailers from taking out the good cards and putting only some low-level cards, Roja deliberately covered the cards with black tissue paper and glued the cards to the magazine. Once removed, it was impossible to keep them intact. Put it back without moving. At this time, Roja didn't know that he accidentally pitted Bucky again QC. He, who had already returned to the Seven Waters, was sitting on a chair, holding a cup of tea, preparing to start the new month's comic lottery. Well, what's the best thing to smoke this time? The deal with the Revolutionary Army hasn't been completed yet. It's time for Sanji to teach him how to move. Looking at the column for entering comic keywords, Roja was in a tangle. The comics that meet the requirements of the Revolutionary Army are nothing more than Attack on Titan, and Crimson Eyes, and other resistance-themed comics, and the leg technique and the fighting technique he needs are very simple, nothing more than blood, fighting skills. Class keyword. After thinking about it, Roja entered fighting in the keyword column. Anyway, there are also fighting elements in Attack on Titan, and slashing the red eyes, try to see if you can get them. Thinking so, Roja clicked the lottery button. It was still the familiar card drawing session. When the light flashed, 3 cards representing comics appeared in front of Roja. The first, Hot Blood High School, is useless. When he saw the second comic, Roja was stunned, and burst out laughing. Ultraman Tiga, what the hell? Without thinking about it, Roja skipped this card. He has no interest in turning into a giant in tights, and the degree of shame is too high. Turning to look at the third comic, Roja was stunned when he saw the name of this comic. Rubbing his eyes vigorously, then opening them again to confirm that he was not mistaken, Luo Yuteng stood up suddenly, and the teacup he had been holding in his hand suddenly fell to the ground and shattered. Even if the tea was drenched on his feet, Roja did not have the slightest desire to move, and was still standing in shock. The name on the card is very simple, with only 3 words, but it blasted Roja's brain into a paste. One Piece. I am Nima. Cursing in a low voice, Aunt Luo subconsciously took One Piece into her head, and then sat back on the chair blankly. Feeling the information pouring into his mind, Roja couldn't recover for a while. As early as when he first obtained the God-level cartoonist system, he thought about what he would do if he got the One Piece comics, whether to draw or not to draw. The conclusion at that time was not to draw, because Roja at that time could not bear the huge impact of the publication of the One Piece comics. And now Roja is a little tangled, and now his strength can completely deal with most emergencies, and he is not afraid of anyone finding fault because of comics. However, whether it is worth it or not, should it be drawn. Once published, this comic will surely set off a huge wave in the world. All plots also go into uncharted territory. But in Roja's heart, he still prefers to draw. Every time I look at one familiar plot character after another, because of my own reasons, I embark on a completely different track from the previous life. Roha has an inexplicable refreshment in his heart. And most importantly, once he draws one piece, he is likely to save many people, just like he accidentally saved Monet and Sugar, and indirectly saved Zephyr. Maybe Shanks won't have to break his arm, Nami won't become a thief, and Usopp won't have to endure a miserable childhood. Just as the balance in Roha's heart gradually tilted, the system's prompt sound suddenly sounded. Detected, the host extracted the exclusive comics of this world and successfully triggered the hidden mission. Close black lens bracket. Hidden mission. Profit. No, this is a spoiler. Close black lens bracket. Mission goal. Draw and publish One Piece comics, at least 10 volumes. Close black lens bracket. Task reward. Designate a comic book. Fans are worth 5 million. Designated Comic World Premium Draw Once. Close black lens bracket. The hidden mission that suddenly appeared, like the last weight that overwhelmed the balance, completely made Roha's decision. Painting. Just draw one piece. Draw until the world is turned upside down. Chapter 54 Overlord is domineering. Long way. 5/10. As soon as he said it, Roha picked up the brush and paper and came to the table. Although he said that he planned to draw one piece, he still needed to revise it a little. After thinking about the places that needed to be revised, he started to write. The first volume of One Piece is mainly about the encounter between Luffy and Shanks, and the defeat of the Navy Colonel, Monka, in Shieldstown and the subjugation of Zoro. Among them, Roha deliberately concealed Kebi and replaced it with a different character. For this role, who is likely to shine in the Navy in the future, Roha doesn't want to ruin his life too soon. As for Monka and the Erita who grabbed Kebi, they naturally had no concerns. In the end, Roha also increased the size of the painting, Zoro's Memories of Kuina. Anyway, it's not difficult for him to draw a few more articles. It would be even better if he could save this amazingly talented girl. Roha is really looking forward to what it will be like if Kuina can grow up. A new generation of female swordsmen. Zoro and Kuina, the duel of the pinnacle of swordsmanship. Roha couldn't help laughing. This kind of spoiler plus dominating the fate of others is really cool, don't want it. The more Roha painted, the more excited he was, and he simply became familiar with it, and completed the first volume of One Piece early the next morning. Next, it's time to wait for a suitable time to serialize. Roha's eyes were filled with unprecedented excitement as he stroked the drawing in his hand. He knew that once this sketch started serialization, the world would embark on an unknown trajectory and gradually get out of his control. But, isn't that right? A domineering smile appeared on Roha's face. In the previous life, he was very tired of living a life like a walking corpse in that immutable world every day. When you come to this world, if you follow the plot honestly, what's the point? Only living in a world full of unknowns can make him feel truly alive. Thinking of this, Roha had a sense of understanding, and the most gloomy air in his heart was swept away, and the whole person relaxed. As if he had broken through the last barrier in his heart, an unprecedented domineering aura filled his body. Om. Boundless ripples suddenly emanated from Roha, spreading to all directions, sweeping in all directions. Oh. Thump, Wei Tong. Before Roha could react, he saw the pedestrians in the distance rolled their eyes and fell to the ground one by one. Why, with Roha as the center, a large number of people seemed to be swept by a scythe, and collapsed to the ground. In an instant, the entire area fell into a strange silence. Immediately afterwards, on the capital of the Seven Waters, a piercing alarm sounded. At this time, Roha came back to his senses, was startled by the scene in front of him, and then an ecstatic smile appeared on his face. That one just now seemed to be overlord and domineering. Wrong. It's not a simple tyrannical domineering. Both the range and the power are much stronger than Luffy's overlord in the original work. Roha touched the crack on the wall beside him, looking horrified. Is his overlord color so strong? Even the stone walls were shattered. This level of overlord color is no longer inferior to Shank's. What the hell is going on? Roha looked at his hands in disbelief, and was a little unacceptable for a while. He just awakened the overlord, so strong. Suddenly, Roha touched his heart, remembered something, and quickly opened the system panel. Sure enough, his overlord color was judged as a new skill by the system, and it appeared on the panel, and there was an extra suffix after his name. Skill, Domineering and Domineering. Special effects, Longway. Sure enough, it's because of the dragon's heart, but I didn't expect it to be so strong. The excited Roha subconsciously wanted to use it again, but when he saw the security forces rushing in from a distance, he smiled awkwardly. If you don't try it, it will be troublesome if you bring down all the guards. At this moment, there was a rush of wind breaking in the sky, and the next moment, Artoria, who was fully armed, descended from the sky. Roha, are you all right? Alto held the sword in his hand and looked around with a solemn expression. When she saw thousands of people lying on the ground in a radius of hundreds of meters, her complexion suddenly sank. What a destructive force. The most important thing is that all those who passed out in a coma were unscathed. It's just too weird. Seeing this, Artoria clenched the sword in her hand tightly and firmly guarded Roha's side. Roha on the side scratched his head, a little embarrassed. It's okay, this is what I did. What? Artoria was a little confused. I said that these people were all made by me. Seeing Artoria looking at herself in shock, Roha was even more embarrassed. I suddenly had some insight just now, and I accidentally confiscated my strength, and it became like this. Epiphany. Accidentally. Artoria opened her mouth slightly, and the hair on her head straightened immediately. What are you kidding? A comprehension can do this, is what you comprehend as a nuclear bomb. If it is really released, do you want to level the 7 waters? Most importantly, why should you have an epiphany over lunch? When she thought that she had given up her lunch and ran over because of Roha's mistake, Artoria sighed in anger. That was the most anticipated lunch of the day. Monet made it himself. At this time, Roha also noticed the grain of rice on the corner of Artoria's mouth, and the smile on her face suddenly froze. He seems, maybe, delays the Food King's meal. Chapter 55 One Piece starts serialization. 6/10. Roha, who felt that he was in trouble, quickly apologized, and promised to cook by himself tonight and cook a large table of dishes before letting Artoria's anger calm down. After confirming that Roha was fine again and again, Artoria turned around and was about to leave. Looking at Artoria's back, Roha showed a warm smile. If it was at the beginning of time travel, Artoria would not have cared about him so much, but with the growth of time, coupled with Roha and Monet's actions to completely take care of Artoria as a family, she was very concerned about the people here. The sense of belonging is getting stronger and stronger. Maybe one day, Artoria will really give up and return to the original world and stay by their side. Just before Artoria was about to leave, she suddenly paused and said without looking back. Hello, Roha. Huh, what's wrong? Roha keenly felt that Artoria seemed a little sad. You should spend more time with Monet, she really paid a lot for you. After saying that, Artoria walked away without looking back. Behind her, Roha stood on the spot with a contemplative look on his face, and did not leave for a long time. Monet. Gently pinching the corner of his clothes, Roha showed a memory. Speaking of which, Monet himself chose his current clothes. Every time he changed it, Monet washed it with his own hands and put it by his bedside. For a long time, it has also been the operation of the Dream magazine hosted by Monet alone. Thinking of this, Roha suddenly remembered that Monet is only 17 now. In the past life, he was just a student hiding under the wings of his parents, enjoying a free life. But now, she has to work hard every day for Roha's career, and she has very little time to rest. Even her sister, Sugar, who has always been dependent on each other, has neglected a lot. But Monet has never complained, and has always been so strong, showing his best side to Roja. At this time, Roja discovered that he owed Monet too much. Go accompany her, Roja said silently in his heart. When he came to Dream magazine, Monet's office, he saw Monet sitting behind his desk, blocked by layers of documents. Hearing the door opening, Monet looked up suspiciously, and then a surprised expression appeared on her face. Monet hurriedly tucked his messy hair from staying up late and stood up. Brother, why are you here? Speaking, Monet noticed the drawing in Roja's hand, and while sorting out the collar for Roja, he said, "Is there a new comic? I'll arrange it." Listening to Monet's gentle words, Roja couldn't help anymore and hugged Monet. Monet was stunned for a moment, and then asked timidly, "Brother, what's the matter with you?" "Monet, let's go on a trip, take Sugar and Arturia, and go on a trip together," Roja said in a trembling voice. Feeling the trembling in Roja's words, Monet's body suddenly softened, shoved himself into Roja's arms, and nodded gently. However, what about Sanji? Monet suddenly said in Roja's arms. "Don't worry about him, as long as I assign tasks to him, that little devil can stay in the kitchen for a lifetime." Roja replied casually, how could he take Sanji, a little pervert, on a sweet trip with the girls? Suddenly, Roja's body froze, and an electric current flashed in his mind. Sanji, kitchen. Roja suddenly remembered. Sanji was still in the kitchen when he put on the Overlord color just now. And now, Sanji is probably training to control the oil temperature. Kirito, Sanji, please don't pour it into the frying pan. Thinking that Sanji was likely to have an accident, Roja quickly explained the situation to Monet, and then hurried back. When he returned to the villa and entered the kitchen, he saw a small figure lying beside the boiling oil pan without moving. Sanji, Sanji. Roja quickly picked up Sanji and checked his entire body. Fortunately, there was nothing serious except for a little burn. Roja, who breathed a sigh of relief, sat on the ground with Sanji in his arms, unable to calm down for a long time. It seems that no matter what you do in the future, you have to pay attention. With his current strength, there is a slight error, and for ordinary people, it is 0.2 disasters of extinction. After giving Sanji a little bandage, and taking him back to the room to rest, Roja returned to the room. He wants to plan a trip with Monet and the others, and arrange the serialization of One Piece by the way. 2 days later, a luxurious boat carried Roja and others slowly away from the Seven Waters. Behind them, in the printing factory in the Seven Waters, countless workers are working intensively. In the hands of the workers, a brand new magazine was gradually stapled into shape. And the cover of this magazine is a boy wearing a straw hat. Chapter 56 Carp's Routine, 7/10. On the day the new issue of Dream magazine was released, the Navy headquarters. Tina, listen to Smog, do you have an SR? On the training ground of the Navy headquarters, Garp walked over leisurely with a bag of senbei. Tina, who was training, heard someone talking to her, and raised her head quickly. It was Lieutenant General Garp, who was rarely seen at the training ground. Tina quickly stood up and saluted excitedly, Lieutenant General Garp. Excited Tina, her face flushed red, she couldn't help it. Standing in front of her was the legend of the Navy, the idol of countless sailors, hero, Garp. Relax, don't be so restrained. Garp waved his hand and asked while eating the senbei, the one I said just now. What? Oh, you mean the card in the fantasy magazine. I do have an SR. Tina hurriedly took out a card from her pocket. This is it, SR Hawkeye. Seeing the eagle eye on the card, Garp's eyes lit up and said with a smile, you were lucky. Hey 27. Being praised by her idol, Tina smiled embarrassedly, Lieutenant General Cap, what are you? Tina has long heard that Lieutenant General Garp is very interested in this card. I heard that it is for her grandson to play. Hearing this, Garp smiled happily, and proudly took out a stack of cards and unfolded. These are all mine. Wow, Lieutenant General Garp is so lucky, Tina exclaimed, looking over. She saw at least 7 or 8 SRs. It's okay, Garp asked suddenly, want to exchange? What? Tina was stunned for a moment, and then hesitantly said, but Tina only has this SR, and Tina quite likes it. What's so good about Hawkeye? Garp curled his lips. Look, I have SR Queen Hancock and SR Crane here. These two are suitable for you. How about it? 2 for 1, you are very cost-effective. Quote. Garp tried his best to fool Tina. The trading cards have been on sale for 3 weeks now, and because of the generous rewards, there has been a wave of card collecting in the world. Some good people deliberately count the probability of each card appearing, and make a card rarity form. Among them, SR Eagle Eye has always been in the top 3 SR rarity, and it can be regarded as the most precious card under SSR. The value of one card is enough to top 10 other SR cards. Of course, Tina, who has been training in the naval training camp, doesn't know this. At this time, Tina looked at the 2 cards that Garp handed over, with a hesitant expression on her face. The enchantingness of the female Emperor Hancock and the heroic appearance of the young version of the Crane are deeply loved by her, but the Eagle Eye of the greatest swordsman in the world is also very handsome. Tina is so tangled, Tina said to herself. Should I change it? If I don't change it, I'll change it with someone else. Garp was about to take back the card. Change, I'll change. In a hurry, Tina quickly put Hawkeye into Garp's hands, and then snatched Empress and Crane from Garp's hands. Garp took Hawkeye in his hand and touched it, with a full smile on his face. After the change, I'll go first. Tina, you can continue training. Yes, Lieutenant General Garp. Tina saluted again, but what puzzled her was how Lieutenant General Garp walked in such a hurry, as if he was running away. Garp, who had successfully deceived a card, walked happily in the square, only to feel that the senbei tasted a lot better. At this time, a naval soldier suddenly found Garp. What? Warring States has something to do with me. Garp scratched his head with a guilty conscience. He wouldn't have cheated the card in the headquarters during this time, let Sengoku know. Garp had a headache at the thought of being shattered by the Sengoku guy. You go back and tell him that you didn't find me. Garp turned his head and was about to leave, but before he could take 2 steps, he was stopped by the Marines. Mr. Garp, please forgive me. We dispatched a company to find you. And the Warring States General said that this time the matter is very urgent. If we can't find you, our entire company will be punished. Okay, send out a company. It's not about cheating. It is estimated that the pirates there are making trouble again. He is familiar with this, and it is good to fight. When he heard that he didn't have to endure the broken thoughts of the Warring States period, Garp suddenly became happy, laughed and patted the sea soldier on the shoulder. Ha ha ha, you said it earlier. If you said I didn't go, let's go, take me to the Warring States. After a while, Garp, who was laughing and giggling, came to the outside of Sengoku's office. Yo, Warring States, what are you looking for from me? Garp pushed open the door of the office and shouted to the people inside. In the office, Sengoku was looking at a fantasy magazine at 5:17 o'clock. Suddenly the door of his office was savagely pushed open by Garp, and the Warring States frowned. He wanted to talk about Garp and ask him to correct his stinky problems, but when he saw the cartoon he was reading, he suddenly didn't teach Garp a lesson. Interested? You're here, sit down first. Sengoku said with a heavy expression. Garp, who was ready to fight against the Warring States, suddenly saw this situation and was a little stunned. Did something really happen? The Warring States period did not have broken thoughts. What happened? Garp was rarely serious. Alas. Sengoku sighed and pushed the Dream magazine in front of him to Garp. See for yourself. Look at what? Isn't this a fantasy magazine? Garp picked up the magazine suspiciously. Is there an indecent picture of you in the comics? Garp made fun of Sengoku while picking up the magazine. Suddenly, he saw the cover of the magazine. Huh, this kid looks a lot like my Luffy, but it's a little ugly. Chapter 57 Furious Garp, 8/10. This is Luffy, Sengoku suddenly said with a heavy expression. Huh, what did you say? Garp looked away from the cover and looked up suspiciously. I said, ah, you can see for yourself. Warring States sighed again, closed his eyes and stopped talking. Mysterious and mysterious. Garp pouted and turned to the pages of the new comic according to the introduction on the cover. Garp saw the name of the new comic at a glance. One Piece. Interesting, it's actually a pirate-themed comic. Could it be that there are pirates in the Dimension Brigade? When looking at the first page of the comic, a young boy in a navy shirt appeared in front of Garp. Garp's pupils shrank instantly, and his fingers trembled. When he saw the text next to the boy, he could no longer control his emotions, and the magazine in his hand shattered inch by inch. The text reads, Town Boy, Monkey D. Luffy. Warring States. What's going on? Garp roared in a low voice. My grandson, why did he appear in the comics of the Dimension Brigade? Sengoku, who was sitting across from him, stared at Garp without speaking for a long time. He knew the reason for Garp's anger. Luffy's identity was too sensitive. Neither D.'s name nor the identity of the revolutionary Dorig's son could be known at will. Once people know, it is very likely that there will be murder. Dimension Brigade, what are you doing? Is this fantasy magazine your tool to disrupt the world? The Warring States fell into deep thought. After a while, when Garp's mood calmed down a little, Sengoku took out a dream magazine from the drawer next to him and handed it to Garp. Go on and watch it. Garp stared at the cartoon in front of him with blood-red eyes, clenched his fists fiercely, until his hands turned white. He suppressed the anger in his heart, took the magazine, and continued to read. He had to figure out why his grandson appeared in Dream Magazine Q. If the people of the Dimensional Brigade want to do something with his relatives, then Garp will be dead on the way to kill the Dimensional Brigade. Turning the first page with a heavy face, Garp continued to read. When he saw Luffy cut his face with a knife in order to prove that he was not afraid of getting hurt, Garp couldn't help crushing the corner of the table. It turns out that Luffy really wants to be a pirate so much. Yes, after just watching a few scenes, Garp has already decided that this cartoon is real, because the cartoon is his most beloved grandson, a very familiar grandson. In the comics, Luffy's every move is completely in line with the image in Garp's memory, just like as if the author was standing next to Luffy and recorded it. Turning to the second page, a group of familiar people appeared in the painting. Red hair. Garp's face suddenly turned hideous. If it weren't for them, Luffy would never scratch his face. At this time, Garp could not wait to go out to sea immediately and beat up everyone in the red-haired pirates. The manga continues, with the bar owner Makino and the bandit leader appearing one after another. Ignoring the scene where the bandit beat Shanks with a wine bottle, Garp focused his attention on the storyboard where Luffy ate the rubber fruit. In response, Garp had no other reaction than a slight frown. In Garp's opinion, there is little difference between whether there is a devil fruit or not. It can't beat him anyway, but if Luffy really wants to eat it, Garp, the grandfather, doesn't mind finding something better for Luffy. The picture changes, and the fish shop owner and villagers that Garp is familiar with appear in the comics one after another, which makes Garp's mood more and more heavy. This comic is so real, the real thing is like a prophecy. Restraining the doubts in his heart, Garp then read the comics. When he saw the bandit leader stepping on Luffy under his feet, Garp snorted coldly, failed to control his strength, and the magazine in his hand smashed again. In this regard, Warring States had long expected, and handed Garp a magazine, and threw the broken magazine into the trash can. Before I knew it, the comics of this issue had come to the end. Although this comic was only half a volume, Garp was looking haggard. In the final plot, in order to protect Luffy, Shanks was bitten off his right arm by the King of Near Water, and gave Luffy a straw hat on the dock, and Luffy also made a lifelong promise here. Find a partner who is more powerful than the members of the Red Hair Pirates, find One Piece and become the Pirate King. Woo. Carp closed the comic with a heavy face, without talking nonsense, got up and walked outside. Cap, wait a minute, Sengoku suddenly called to him behind him. Sengoku. Carp turned his head angrily, that's my grandson. This time I absolutely can't. Take the green pheasant with you. Sengoku said suddenly, it's the 4 Emperor Pirates after all, it's too dangerous for you alone. You. Cap was stunned for a moment, then nodded heavily, okay. At the same time that Garp led the ship to leave the naval headquarters, a supreme order from the naval headquarters was conveyed to the leader of Donghai Shinbaogu. Prohibition of all letter gulls, selling fantasy magazines to Donghai Windmill Village. Close black lens bracket. At this time, in the center of the new storm, in the Windmill Village, Luffy was still foolishly eating and drinking in Makino's tavern, looking forward to Shanks' return from sea. Chapter 58 Two Traversers. 9/10. East China Sea, on an unknown island. Shanks closed the magazine with an aftertaste, picked up the wine barrel beside him and drank. Captain, what should I do? Lackey on the side looked heavy, also holding a fantasy magazine in his hand. What should I do? Shanks wiped his mouth and wondered. It's in this comic, boss, your right hand is going to be gone. Lackey shouted. Snapped. Jackman came over like a shudder. Idiot, you are too fascinated by comics. Huh. Reiki was still a little unresponsive. PFF'd, ha ha ha, the surrounding pirates burst into laughter. Boss Lackey didn't eat meat today, did he? Don't blame the boss Lackey, it's really that Roja's cartoon is too real, I almost thought the captain's hand was gone. That is, does this kid always peep at us, or else how can he draw so real? I'm still a little confused. Lackey took a big bite of a piece of meat and asked while chewing. Royana Kids comics generally have meanings. The things drawn in this comic are more like prophecies in my opinion. Before going to sea last time, Captain, didn't you mock Lu 247 Fei, saying that he was too young and would be afraid of pain? I think with Luffy's temper, it is very likely that he will scratch himself in the comics. Then what happened next between the bandit and the king of the offshore sea may also be true. Alas, Shanks sighed, and then, Lackey asked with a question mark in his head. If everything was as it was in the comics, maybe I would actually lose my right arm, but don't I know now? Ah, Captain, what do you mean? Lackey suddenly realized. You finally figured it out. Shanks made no secret of his domineering, brigand. King of the Sea, what is that? Dare to appear in front of us. Hey, Jackman. Shanks ordered suddenly. Q. Go and tell Ty's family, starting today, if you see a bandit, kill me at kill until there are no bandits in the entire East China Sea. IF. Kill me when I see the Sea Kings, kill these beasts, and never dare to appear in front of us again. W. Yes. Jackman's face turned pale, and he turned to walk towards the crew. After finishing speaking, Shanks laughed twice, picked up a barrel of wine again, and drank it in the direction of the Seven Waters. Good boy, I must invite you to drink next time. If you don't get drunk, you won't go home. Ah, who's talking about me? Roja, who was whispering to Monet on the bow, sneezed suddenly, rubbed his nose, and couldn't help muttering. Hee, it must be an employee of Dream magazine, blame you for kidnapping their bosses. Monet smirked and shrank back into Roja's arms. I don't know if I kidnapped their boss, and I took their boss to the sky, do you think so? Roja smiled and slid down quietly holding Monet's hand. On this trip, their goal is the most peaceful East China Sea. In addition to sightseeing, Roja also wants to go to the East China Sea to see how much the One Piece comics have changed. Cough, cough, cough. Sanji's untimely voice suddenly came from behind. Master, there seems to be a thundercloud ahead, should we avoid it? There are thunderclouds. Then avoid it, and ask me what I am doing. Roja, who was interrupted, said angrily. Originally, he wanted to keep Sanji in the Seven Waters and enjoy the sweet trip, but Sanji, this stinky brat, secretly hid in the cabin and didn't come out until the next night. What a horrible sight. However, it was unhappy, and Roha would not be angry with a child. In the end, he could only hold his nose and let Sanji follow, but he gave Sanji the task of sailing. Boom, boom. The roar of thunder sounded in the distance. Roha frowned and stood up subconsciously. This thunder, something is wrong. Picking up the telescope from his side, Roha looked over. Sure enough, there was something wrong with this thundercloud. Not only was the height surprisingly low, but it also moved extremely fast. Even the direction of the lightning strike was very uniform. Like someone is manipulating thunderclouds. Sanji, where are we now? Roha had a bad feeling in his heart. One day's journey ahead and we'll be below the empty island. Empty island, Analu, Arc Proverbs. In Roha's heart, he instantly recalled the information about the empty island, and one by one, he matched the thundercloud in the distance. The thundercloud in front of him was 100% created by the Ark's proverb, and its function was to strengthen Enel's ability. However, how could Analu appear here? Roha has some doubts in his heart. Shouldn't Analu be on Burka now, and the Arc Proverbs shouldn't be built yet? Why does it appear here? What's that? Roha narrowed his eyes. Under that thundercloud, there were two figures. Subconsciously opened the stigmata, and Roha's vision was instantly strengthened. The two flickering figures under the thundercloud also appeared in his sight. Suddenly, two girls wearing brown school uniforms, white shirts, and black short skirts appeared in front of Roha. However, Roha had just locked the two of them, and saw their figures blurred for a while, and the next moment they appeared dozens of meters away, and where they were just now, a thunder and lightning as thick as the mouth of a bull crashed down. After Roha observed many times, he finally saw the appearance of the two girls. This joke is too big. Who can tell me why Misaka Makoto and Shirai Kuroko were hunted down by Analu? Chapter 59 Misaka Makoto's Prayer, 10 out of 10. Almost at the same time, the system prompt sounded in my mind. Conditions are met, trigger a temporary mission. Close black lens bracket. Temporary mission. Save the traveler, Misaka Makoto, Shirai Kuroko. Close black lens bracket. Mission goal. Rescue Misaka Makoto, Shirai Kuroko from Analu. At least one person will survive. Task reward. For each person saved, 1 million fans will be rewarded. Close black lens bracket. Without thinking, Roha took over the task. Is it I, Nailu? You dare to bully my traveler, see how dad beats you up. Before he finished speaking, he saw a huge thunder light shoot out from the thunder cloud, breaking through the air. How dare you do it first? When Roha and his party appeared in the boat, Shirai Kuroko noticed them. Sister, there is someone there. There was no excitement in Shirai Kuroko's tone, but rather panic. Kuroko, avoid that ship. Misaka Makoto, who was behind her, said weakly after deflecting a flash of lightning. Understood, elder sister, you can rest for a while. Kuroko Shirai nodded, and continued to teleport out with the wooden board and Misaka Makoto under her feet. Since being hunted down by the monster above their heads, the two of them have encountered countless ships. Some ships turned around in a hurry after seeing the thundercloud, while others noticed the two of them and wanted to come over to help. However, without exception, they were all smashed into pieces by the lightning that appeared out of thin air. Over time, the two have given up the idea of asking for help, and the first impression of seeing the boat is turning. Run away. Be sure to stay away from the boat, otherwise, more people will die because of them. Now, it can only be hoped that the ship will turn quickly and not be spotted by that monster. What Shirai Kuroko and the other two didn't know was that the monster they were talking about was the one with the ability of the thunder fruit, Analu. Way has a large-scale detection ability, Analu of HeartNet. Boom. At the same time that Shirai Kuroko teleported out, a huge thunder with a thick trunk cut through the sky and shot out. The target is Roha and their ship. I mortals, go to hell. Analu stood at the bow of the boat, grinning loudly. It's over. Masaka Makoto closed her eyes in despair. Under that kind of attack, the people on that ship were dead. At this moment, another sound of thunder suddenly sounded, making Masaka Makoto puzzled that the sound of thunder seemed to be coming from that ship. Opening her eyes, Masaka Makoto saw an unforgettable scene in her life. When the dazzling thunder light hit the ship, it was like hitting an invisible barrier, and could no longer move forward half a step. Urgently, a voice of hidden anger sounded from the ship. QNMD, give it back to you. Boom. Li Guang actually went back the same way and shot directly at the arc in the sky, and it was faster. Stronger. What? Analu's pupils shrank, and he hurriedly drove the arc to avoid it, but even so, the arc was still punched with a huge hole. At the same time, on the boat, a figure slowly rose, and the boundless domineering swept out in an instant, like a king descending, staring in all directions. So strong. Masaka Makoto cried out in surprise. This invisible pressure alone made her a little breathless. How strong this person is. Immediately afterwards, Masaka Makoto was overjoyed and hurriedly shook Shirai Kuroko's shoulder. Haitsi, Kuroko, we are saved. Someone is going to fight that monster. Shirai Kuroko didn't respond. Sunspot. Sunspot. Masaka Makoto felt a little bad in her heart, so she quickly got off Kuroko and walked in front of her. I saw that Shirai Kuroko's eyes were tightly closed, and his face was pale. Kuroko, are you all right, Kuroko? Masaka Makoto was frightened and hurriedly sat down with Kuroko in her arms. Only at this time did she realize why Haitsi insisted on going behind her back. In the name of letting Makoto block the lightning that she couldn't dodge, in fact, she didn't want Makoto to see her pale face due to overuse of her abilities. Kuroko, who has been supporting until now, finally, at the limit, could not resist Roha's domineering arrogance, and completely fainted. Haitsi, don't worry about anything. Masaka Makoto shed tears silently while holding Kuroko, and came to this world inexplicably. Before being chased and killed by that monster, Kuroko was silently accompanying her. After she accidentally used the railgun and was discovered by the monster and chased after him, Kuroko kept taking her away despite the danger. Lost Kuroko. Masaka Makoto didn't dare to think about it any longer, so she could only hold Kuroko tightly, and whispered a prayer towards the figure facing thunder in the sky. Please, I beg you, defeat that monster and save us. Chapter 59 Analu's Railgun First Update. Damn mortals, how dare to despise God's punishment. On the ark, Analu looked at the wrecked ark and was furious. The taiko drum on the right shoulder was slammed violently, and a phoenix-shaped thunderbird came out and flew towards Roha. 30 million volt thunderbird. However, to no avail. The scene just now reappeared, and Roha, who had transformed into Accelerator, reflected the thunderbird back without moving. Laugh. Lightning flashed, and the rapidly returning thunderbird shot directly at Analu. Again, Analu frowned, letting Thunderbird pass through his chest, unscathed. At this time, Analu was also a little puzzled. What kind of ability does this guy who suddenly appeared? Not only can he fly in the sky, but he can also reflect his attacks, which is extremely strange. Cut, annoying elemental body. Roha pouted. Although he had expected it, he still felt a little upset about the elemental body of the natural fruit. It's time to learn to be domineering in armed color. Roha thought to himself. Immediately, he turned back in the air and flew to the side of the sea. The first goal is to ensure the safety of Masaka Makoto and Shirai Kuroko. After they are sent to the ship, I will trouble Analu. In the sky behind him, Analu was still constantly attacking. The 30 million volt Thunderbird, the 30 million volt Thunder Beast, and the 60 million volt Thunder Dragon were used one after another, and they were reflected back by Roha one by one. Watching the comical battle in the sky, Masaka Makoto's brain was short-circuited. Destroyed the village she traveled to, and beat the monster that she and Kuroko Shirai were powerless to fight back, and there was nothing to do with this guy who suddenly appeared. One after another, or straight lines, or animal-shaped thunder, going back and forth between the two, it looks like an angry child throwing his doll to adults. Hit the adults, nothing at all, but the children, the dolls thrown back by the adults, were dizzy. Seeing this, Masaka Makoto looked at the figure flying towards them with a road in the distance, her eyes filled with curiosity. What kind of person can have such amazing power? It is estimated that he is a middle-aged man who has experienced many battles, with scars all over his body, the kind that makes people daunting just by looking at it. The figure was getting closer and closer, and Masaka Makoto couldn't help holding Kuroko tightly in her arms, holding a coin tightly in her hand. Although Masaka Makoto is grateful to this person for saving them, she still doesn't know whether this person is an enemy or a friend. However, as the figure got closer and closer, Masaka Makoto suddenly widened her eyes with a look of disbelief on her face. When Roha stood on the wooden board where they were, Masaka Makoto could no longer hold back the horror in her heart. Accelerator, why are you here? But immediately, Masaka Makoto shook her head. No, she has seen Accelerator several times. Although the aura of his body is unexpected, it is more of a morbid madness, which is completely different from the domineering of the man in front of him. However, with the same appearance and ability, who is this man? Accelerator's egg-born brother. Masaka Makoto's thoughts diverged a bit. I'm not. Roha replied casually, and immediately checked the condition of Shirai Kuroko. After confirming that Shirai Kuroko was just too tired to faint, he breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, no problem. At this time, another huge electric light hit. Roha frowned, like slapping a fly, and slapped the electric light back. Afterwards, they picked up Masaka Makoto and Shirai Kuroko one by one and flew towards the ship. In the sky, Analu saw that his attack was beaten back again, and Roha looked like he didn't exist again, and his lungs were about to explode. The majesty of God cannot be violated. Damn. Analu's whole body flashed with electric light, and he wanted to take the initiative to attack and completely electrocute this disgusting mortal to ashes. But at this moment, his eyes swept away, and suddenly he saw a huge object shrouded in black cloth on the bow. His eyes lit up, and he suddenly laughed. Can you bounce back, lightning? It doesn't matter, this time I'll see if you can bounce back to my new move. Before coming to the black cloth, Analu lifted the black cloth, and suddenly, a huge machine appeared in front of him. The entire machine is like a huge barrel, and next to the machine, there are huge metal projectiles. Touching the cold barrel of the gun, Analu suddenly laughed sinisterly. The mortals of the Dimensional Brigade actually dared to reveal such a powerful move to the public. As long as they catch the little girl who can master the railgun, this God's judgment will be completely completed. Saying that, Analu picked up a projectile and put it into the barrel of the gun. After pointing the target at Roha's ship, he laughed wildly and injected electricity into the barrel. Mortal, give me death, today, I will use this unfinished God's judgment to smash you to pieces. On the sea, Roha also flew to the ship with Masaka Makoto and Shirai Kuroko. Artoria, who had been waiting on the deck for a long time, hurried over and took Kuroko Shirai. Thank you for saving us. Masaka Makoto bowed deeply to Roha, then raised her head and asked. But I want to know, who are you? What is Accelerator's relationship to you? We'll talk about this later. Roha frowned and gave Masaka Makoto a faint glance. From the beginning, he had been speculating on the time when Masaka Makoto had crossed over. Now it seems that she does not know Wings of Water, and she is so naive. It is estimated that she crossed over before the main storyline began. In other words, she hasn't met Kamiju Tuma, and naturally, she hasn't encountered Accelerator's massacre of Masaka's sister, so she doesn't have any ill feelings towards Accelerator. Thinking of this, Roha couldn't help hooking the corner of his mouth, it seems that the first impression has not collapsed. Turning his head to let Sanji drive the ship away and telling everyone in 4.4 to hide in the cabin, Roha turned to look at Arturia. "I'll leave the boat to you." "Okay," Arturia nodded solemnly. After that, Roha flew up again and rushed towards the thundercloud. From just now, he has sensed a huge sense of threat from the thundercloud. Worried that Analu would jump off the wall and use Lei Ying to clear the field, so the battle must stay away from Monet and the others. At this time, on the Ark, the preparations for God's judgment are coming to an end. Countless dazzling lightning flashes on the 10-meter-long pitch-black barrel. In the center of the barrel, the metal projectile has been completely covered by lightning, and lightning is continuously blooming all around. "Go to hell, mortal!" Analu roared and pulled the trigger abruptly. Chapter 60 The Ultimate Nightmare at Sea. Boom! A harsh sonic boom sounded, and the huge projectile broke the sound barrier the moment it was collected. Not only that, the reaction force brought by the powerful kinetic energy immediately exploded the entire gun barrel, and countless iron pieces were scattered and blasted, making the entire bow of the Ark riddled with holes. Ignoring the iron pieces that passed through his body one after another, Analu looked into the distance excitedly. An orange-yellow, laser-like beam of light appeared in the sky, shooting towards Roha at a speed that was indistinguishable to the naked eye. As the steel ball flew out, it brought a huge wind pressure. On the sea surface where the beam of light passed, the sea water seemed to be avoided by a sharp blade, leaving a straight path. Super electromagnetic gun. In the cabin, Misaka Makoto, who had been lying on the window and looked outside, couldn't help but exclaimed. That monster could actually use her railgun. No, not a railgun. Misaka Makoto suddenly shook her head. This beam of light looked amazing, but in fact it was far from a real railgun in terms of power and speed. A real railgun has to reach at least 3 times the speed of sound, and this one can only reach the standard of the speed of sound, and can only be called a fake railgun. 27 inches at this speed, with that guy's strength, I'm afraid he can easily dodge it. Misaka Makoto suddenly burst out laughing, feeling that she was thinking a little too much. If that guy really has the same ability as Accelerator, I'm afraid it doesn't need much, just stand and bounce back. While Misaka Makoto was thinking, Roha also recognized the origin of this attack. This is a railgun. Roha raised his eyebrows and looked at the beam of light with an unexpected look on his face. He really didn't expect that Analu would actually read comics and learn the railgun. But, this idiot beep, I'm afraid that I only read Misaka Makoto in the manga, but I still haven't recognized him as Accelerator. Do you look down on me for this kind of physics attack? Since you're courting death, then you can't blame me. Roha gave a bad laugh, and his feet fell into the sea immediately. A strange scene appeared. As Roha's feet came into contact with the sea surface, with the place where he stood as the center, the sea surface with a radius of tens of meters suddenly calmed down, like stagnant water. Whether it is the sea breeze or the sky-breaking waves brought by the super electromagnetic gun, there is no way to make any waves in this sea area. In the blink of an eye, the railgun has come to Roha, less than 10 meters away. Feeling the power of the sea beneath his feet, he kept pouring into his fists. Roha hooked the corner of his mouth, and then punched out. Zzz. The orange beam of light with unparalleled power slammed into Roha's fist, and the invisible shock waves swept all around in an instant. Starting from Roha's feet, layers of waves surged up instantly and spread around. In the distance, the boat driven by Sanji was like being hit by an invisible giant hammer and moved out in an instant. Boom! The next moment, an orange beam of light violently broke through the waves and returned to the original path with a stronger power than before. Wherever he passed, there were sonic booms, and almost in an instant, he returned to the front of the Ark. What? Looking at the oncoming railgun and the huge waves behind it, Analu could no longer maintain the majesty of God. His eyes widened, and he exclaimed. Without any hesitation, Analu jumped up hastily, turned into an electric light and fled upwards. Boom boom boom. The super electromagnetic gun, which was blessed with the kinetic energy of the sea, shot the entire ark in the opposite direction. Afterwards, a series of sacrificial explosions sounded, and huge explosions occurred all over the ark. In just a few tens of seconds, the original tens of meters of ark's proverbs have been turned into fragments of the sky, scattered to the sea. Anilu landed on the ruins of the ark, with blue veins on his face and a terrifying expression. Damn pariah, actually, you dare scoff. A piece of iron suddenly flew from a distance, smashing Anilu's face into smashes. Although it didn't cause any damage to Anilu, he held back his words. Are you finished? Then continue to fight. Roja scratched his ears with an impatient look on his face. This guy, Anilu, said so much. You bastard. Anilu's face was suddenly bruised, but he didn't get angry, but a hint of retreat in his heart. From the beginning of the fight to the present, not only did he not hurt Roja in the slightest, but he was hit several times by his own attack, and even the ark exploded, not to mention how aggrieved. Where did this monster come from? Mortal, why do you want to be with these pariahs because of your power? As long as you give Masaka Makoto to me, I can let you go. As he said that, the electric light flashed in Anilu's hand, pointing to the ship that was moving away. Otherwise. Scoff. Another piece of iron smashed Anilu's mouth. Damn it, it's over. Anilu's eyes were red with anger. Mortal, you can't hurt my body of God, don't be in. Scoff. Mortal, I. Scoff. I. Scoff. No matter how Anilu hides, as long as he opens his mouth, his head will be smashed by a supersonic iron piece. In the end, he simply stops talking and stares at Roja with gasping breath. I'm going to kill you today. Anilu roared in a low voice. Forget it, I won't play with you anymore. Roja chuckled, the chill in his eyes biting to the bone. Whoever dares to threaten him will die. Landing from the air, Roja stood on the sea again. The sea area within a radius of 1 kilometer was instantly silent and calm. Seeing this, Anilu suddenly became nervous. Lightning instantly surrounded his body, and his heart network spread out, exploring the changes in the surrounding sea area. The next moment, Anilu's face changed suddenly, and he looked at Roja in disbelief. At Roja's feet, the sea level undulated. Thousands of tons of seawater tumbled endlessly under his feet, and there was a wave after wave of undercurrents in the sea, and when they collided, there were even bursts of roars. How is it possible to do such a thing? After receiving the feedback from Shinwang, Anilu screamed in shock, turned into a thunderlight and stepped on the ruins of the ark to escape into the distance. At this moment, Anilu had only one thought in his mind. Run, 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 the farther you run, the better. It's better not to see this monster in your life. How is it possible that someone can manipulate the sea? Behind him, Roja coldly looked at Anilu's back, killing intent in his eyes. The next moment, the sea surface under his feet suddenly bulged, and Roja was slowly lifted up. Roja moved forward slowly with the tumbling sea surface. The speed was getting faster and the height was getting higher and higher. Under his feet, the sea water is churning endlessly, and the growth rate is extremely fast. In a few seconds, it will become the size of a city wall, and it is still growing. On the way forward, there are still countless seawater merging into it, with bursts of roars, turning into courtiers, holding Roja forward. Every time a wave hits the sea, it makes an earth-shattering sound. The sea is roaring, the air is trembling, and all the creatures in the entire sea are trembling under Roja's feet, looking up at the birth of the natural disaster. After only a few hundred meters, the natural disaster that destroyed the sky and the earth finally took shape at Roja's feet. This is one of the top natural disasters in the world, and it is also a nightmare for countless devil fruit people. Even the top powerhouses in the world have to temporarily avoid the edge in front of it and survive. It is the ultimate nightmare on the sea. Great Tsunami.